which is defending the freedom of speech. So the speech against for this is free. So do I see any delegates who would like to speak against this motion? I know it's early, but I'm going to need to see voting cards. Okay, I see that delegate there. Can we remind delegates that it has to be a legitimate speech against? It's very important. Yeah. And once you get up to the stage, please state your name and constituent member for the room. And you have 2 minutes.
Morning conference, nice to see some of you made it out. Dario Calapor, the Students' Union at UE. I'm not expecting a lot from this, seeing as you rejected my amendment yesterday, but I've got to give it a go. This motion does not defend freedom of speech, like it says in the motion title. In reality, this motion seeks to censor and reduce freedom of speech on campuses. I made that very clear yesterday. All I can say is that once again, if we want to end this issue, nip it in the bud once and for all, vote against this motion, vote for absolute freedom of speech, because that's the only way that we can progress as a society. Thank you. Please vote against this motion.
Thank you, Delegate. We're going to move now to a vote on this motion. That is motion UD 111, defending freedom of speech. All those in favor of this motion, please raise your voting. Oh, sorry, 1 second. Sorry, my bad. We need to do a summation first. I apologize. It's early days. So can I see any delegate who would like to? I see that delegate there. You have 2 minutes. Please state your name and constituent member. You have 1.5 minutes for a summation. Thanks.
Good morning, conference. Over the past few years, we've all heard the outrage and lectures surrounding freedom of speech. Everyone from the Office for Students, the Charities Commission, and the far-right press have attacked our movement. And we know this to be no accident. As we win the public debate about fees, as we expose the crisis in mental health, and as we cry for more funding and travel support for FE, our detractors attempt to divide and distract us. But let's make something clear. If they want to talk about freedom of speech, let's talk about freedom of speech. Let's talk about how the Prevent strategy has for years been shutting down events on our campus, closing debates held by students, and targeting Muslims in every corner of this country. Let's talk about how most institutions now require societies to fill out hundreds of pages to hold a simple event, need to wait weeks upon weeks to be able to hold a simple campaign. Let's talk about how Toby Young is rewarded after speaking at a racist eugenics conference, yet students are interrogated for environmental activism. So we say, let's talk about free speech. And let's talk about how there is only one place for the Prevent strategy, and that is in the ashes of history, in the stories told of the student movement from years from now, about how here, at this time, we rose against the tides of racism, of bigotry, of repression, and have defeated the tides of those who tried to silence us. How we will not be toyed with or manipulated into believing that we have to invite fascists into our houses because the halls of Parliament say so. And how we will not be divided on our freedom of speech and our freedom of expression. So conference, please vote for this motion. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Delegate. Could you go to the minuting desk? And can I remind all delegates, please state your name and constituent member. Okay, we're now going to move to a vote on this motion. So can I see all delegate cards of those in favor of this motion? Can I see all those against? Can I see all those abstaining? That motion clearly passes. Okay, so the guillotine did fall last night, so now, but we had a procedural motion put in, so that's now going to be handed over to TPC, and we're going to discuss that now.
Hello, everybody. We've had a procedural motion that the guillotine is extended for the UD zone by 15 minutes. This means that we'll have 15 minutes to talk about the motions. We will need speeches for and against this procedural motion.
Okay, so we're going to need to see if there's 100 delegates who would like to see the case for extending the guillotine. If you would like to see that case, please raise your voting cards in the air now. We're going to wait and see just because we've got less people in the room. Can we see those against? Any abstentions? That wasn't a vote. We just, because there's less people on conference floor, we had to look at it for illustrative purposes to defend against 100 people. We did not see 100 people, so we can't go forth with hearing the proposal for extending the guillotine. So that's the end of UD zone. Thank you very much, guys, for having me. I hope we have a fun conference.
All right, everybody, let's crack on with the liberation adoptions now. We're going to do this in alphabetical order. So I'm going to call up each liberation campaign lead to give you their report, and that's how we're going to do this. So can I first ask for the Black students representative to come up, please? All right, hang on, guys. All right, guys, we're going to DPC for a second.
Good morning, conference. So, we're currently at liberation adoptions. If you, I assume you all absolutely read every single document that was sent to you. In the liberation adoptions for the Black Students campaign, there is an error in the paper. It states in there that the rules revision regarding the name change passed at Black Students Conference. However, we have clarified within minutes that it did not pass. So these liberation adoptions for Black Students Conference are excluding that part that says rules revision. Is that clear? Thank you. Black Students Officer.
Thank you. Hi, conference. I hope you're enjoying your second day so far. So I'm Ilyas Nagdi. I'm the NUS Black... Is the presentation coming up? Oh, yeah. There we go. So this year, the Black Students Campaign has been campaigning on a number of issues and sort of overseeing various processes that we're undergoing. So at our last conference, we passed a motion to start a rules revision and start a consultation on the name of the campaign. That consultation has now ended, and a motion is being compiled by the committee, which will be brought to our relevant conference in May, and will be ratified there. The next one is the Muslim Student Survey. So this is something which came out last week. I'm not sure if people have had a chance to look at it. Please go on the NUS Connect website and check it out. It was a joint piece of research done between myself, Harim Ghani, the NUS Women's Officer, and the Federation of Student Islamic Societies. The Muslim Student Survey is the first piece of research done into the experiences of Muslim students in education in the UK, and what we found were truly sort of horrifying and horrific results. Over half of Muslim students in the UK were saying that they had experienced Islamophobic hate online. 1 in 3 Muslim students were saying that they had experienced hate crime or abuse related to their Muslim identity on campus. And there were also lots of lessons for us to take away based on how we behave in the student movement and how we behave at these events. With 1 in 3 Muslim students had attended democratic events at NUS saying that they had faced anti-Muslim abuse at NUS democratic events. So please make sure that we're all conducting ourselves in the best way at these conferences. We all have a responsibility to ourselves and to all the other delegates here. There were several recommendations which explicitly touched on the government's prevent duty. So for those of you that don't know, the government's prevent duty is one of its arms of the counter-terrorism legislation, which over the last few years has been criticised from everyone from our students, our student unions, NUS, truly leading the fight against the prevent duty, which has been adopted by the Universities and College Union, the National Union of Teachers, all the way to getting criticisms from the United Nations. And what it was telling us about the prevent duty in relation to its effect on education was that it was making Muslim students less likely to run for representative roles, less likely to run for part-time officers, less likely to run for sabbatical officers, less likely to run for those political positions and put themselves out there. So there was a lot of recommendations and in detailed discussion within the report on what we can do within our student unions and our democratic spaces to truly allow every student to prosper. The attainment gap, so the Black Students Campaign has again been at the forefront of tackling the attainment gap. This year I've been working with several student unions on the projects they've been launching. So I was at Huddersfield for the launch of their project, and I've been helping other student unions put proposals together everywhere from visiting places like Brighton, and now my mind's gone blank, but yeah. I've been working with like over 20 student unions on individual projects, and one of the things that I'm really excited to say that we've done as well is that we've been taking your ideas, what you've been doing on the attainment gap, the projects you've been launching, and we've been putting them up on NUS Connect, and we've been talking about them, so other student unions can borrow from that practice and can share it, and can adopt it into their student unions as well, so people don't have to start from scratch anymore, but we can use each other as a resource, we can use each other as a toolkit and as a base, which is fantastic. Talked about prevent, so the race equity work. So as everyone knows, last December and the previous 2 years ago, Black Students Officer instigated the Institutional Racism Review, which took a holistic overview of all the spaces within NUS and their treatment of Black students and other marginalized groups, sorry. And then last year, the national president oversaw the development of the NUS Race Equity Plan, which has started to the wheels have started to move in motion based on the plan and what's been going on since then. That's had lots of effects within our movement. So all CEOs, chief execs and staff members within the student movement have had the opportunity to be trained on race equity. All internal staff within NUS have had training on race equity. All your full-time officers at NUS have had training on race equity, and it's being offered up to NEC members as well. And supporting Black workers. So this is a piece of research that I'm doing with the Trade Unions Congress. We'll hopefully be launching it in about 2 months, and it'll be a big piece of research into the experiences of Black students in workplace settings. So that'll be Black students in higher education, further education and apprenticeships, and we'll be looking into experiences of racism in the workplace, as well as talking about discrimination in the workplace and producing leaflets and resources for them to like where they can go for support, and to signpost them to relevant services that they can turn to. I'm also doing work with like a number of different organizations on leadership and charity leadership in particular. So there's some exciting projects that are in the in the making, I guess, with organizations like the Voice for Change and the Stephen Lawrence Foundation. But hopefully all of that will come to light in the next few months. And yeah, I don't really know what else to say. Mine's gone. We'll end there. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Next, we'll move on to a vote now. Can I see all those in favor of... Yep, sorry, terminology's wrong. All those in favor of adopting that, please, guys. Thank you very much. And all those against adopting that? And any abstentions? That's adopted. Thank you very much. We will now move on to the Disabled Students Campaign Officer. If you can please come up. To note, because the conference hasn't yet happened, this is just a report.
Hi, Rachel O'Brien, Disabled Students Officer. So I'm going to be honest, I've been incredibly ill this week, so I have not prepared a speech. So this is going to be interesting. We have no policy for conference to agree to adopt because our conference last year was before national, and we haven't had our conference yet this year. I mean, also on principle, like, we're meant to be autonomous. I'm not sure why you're voting to adopt our policy anyway, but that's just me. So I'm going to have 5 minutes of telling you what we've been doing and how great we are. So I spent a large part of this year concentrating on building grassroots disabled students groups and societies. Part of this was publishing and creating a toolkit at the start of the year on how to set up a disabled students group, like I'm going to be honest, boring constitutional stuff, but also like the more exciting stuff about how to make it like active, sustainable, like actually campaigning and not just a tea and coffee society, because those tend to exist separately, and if people want to drink tea and coffee, they can do that there. The other part of that was running political education days. We have run 5 out of 7 of them so far. Red weather warnings in Scotland, ruined my plans. Unfortunately, I am not responsible for the weather, despite, what, UKIP might say about the gays causing storms or whatever. Like, sadly, I don't have that power yet. So they've been really good. We've been working with local and regional disabled people's organizations in order to run political education sessions on the social model of disability and the history of disability activism. And I'd also like to thank Kareem Ghani, the women's officer, who wrote a fantastic presentation on reproductive justice, which has also been part of that, concentrating on disability and reproductive justice, which has been being run by the DSE Women's Rep, Gina. What else? Access to education. So this has been largely around the disabled students allowance. In England, DSA has been cut in a variety of ways, but the thing we're concentrating on is the £200 surcharge, which disabled students have to pay in order to get the laptop they need. This is also likely to be coming in the north of Ireland if a direct rule happens. And there's talk of it happening possibly in Wales as well, so it is relevant to broader than just England. We have found 20 grand for the legal case. We are still currently looking for a named client, but I've been working with the National Association of Student Money Advisors, various DPOs and charities to try and get out the message that we're looking for this particular person. The eligibility is quite tight. Protecting health services, so there's a particularly nasty model of privatised psychiatry service. In Birmingham, if you came to the Fringe yesterday, I was talking about it. I have been working with the service users up there, as well as local trade unions and community groups to start forming like a coalition to campaign against the rollout of this psychiatry service, because it's a model. It's like the pilot program in Birmingham. They want to roll it out nationally. If you want to talk to me more, I can literally go on for hours about like how terrible it is. Please come and find me or tweet at me or something. We are also going to be writing like a really big guide to like NHS campaigning using both student and non-student case studies. So if any of you were involved in like, you know, campaigning to save your local NHS services, or there's someone on your campus who's really active, like a student nurse or junior doctor or anything like that, please get in contact with me. And there is the possibility of being paid as well if you need extra incentive. Yeah, universal credit. So this wasn't one of my initial priorities, but the government likes ruining my day, basically. Happens when you're disabled. Universal credit is a particularly horrible type of benefit. It's replacing 6 working age benefits, including 2 which disabled students commonly apply for, which are housing benefit and ESA. Full-time disabled students in both FE and HE can't actually get universal credit at all. So they've just lost a load of money, and being disabled is really expensive. Basically, average of £500 of extra cost a month if you're disabled. So in part-time students who can apply for it, there's been like loads and loads of documented issues there as well. Cuts to disability premiums, cuts to people in rent arrears, food banks, people in mental distress, like the list goes on. Like if you Google universal credit bad, you get lots of horror stories if you're, yeah. So what I did was we worked with Disability Rights UK, who are a DPO who do, like, release lots of briefings on like legal stuff, in order to release a briefing on how like disabled students will experience universal credit and the issues there. Sorry. So we worked with them. I also mobilized dozens and dozens of students and SABs to lobby their MPs when the vote happened. The vote passed, but when the government decided it was symbolic. Delegate. Thanks, vote for this, but like you shouldn't have to vote for this.
Thank you. All right, moving on to the next one, because that was just a report. Can I please call up the LGBT+ Students Campaign Officer, please?
We've got a cheat screen down here, so we can just pretend that we've like written speeches, but what we're actually doing is we're just looking at the screen behind us.
It's kind of like, yeah, I'll go first. I mean, that is my slide, Bess.
I know that is your slide, yeah, sorry.
Yeah, it's kind of like being at an award ceremony with the auto cue. It doesn't move. Anyway, so hi everyone. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Noralan Shahid. I've been your NUS LGBT+ officer Open Place for a second year now. So yeah, the first bit of my report is the Estranged Student Solidarity Campaign. If you know me, then you know that this has been a pretty personal campaign for me, because obviously I was an estranged student myself. And there's lots of evidence to prove that estrangement is more likely to be an issue for LGBT+ students in particular, due to a range of different factors. And we also know that institutions don't often account for the impact that estrangement causes during studies, but that also it can pose a problem with UCAS and Student Finance England at the point of application and also securing funding. So the aim of this project was really to ensure that Australian students are more supported across the board, from the point of application right through to graduation and completing their courses in HE and FE. So we launched this campaign in collaboration with Standalone at NUS SU 17 with a workshop in which we highlighted the issues for Australian students. And then, again, in collaboration with Standalone, we worked hard over summer to write and then release our Australian Student Solidarity Campaign Guide in time for Welcome Week. And we decided to dedicate the week of 27th of November last year to encourage campaigning activity offline and online with the hashtag #WithAustralianStudents. And it was great to see so many unions, many who are here today, who took part in the campaign. Shout out to Keele, Oxford, Durham, KCLSU, etc., etc. And we got loads of organisations involved as well, such as the Office for Fair Access, UCAS, Guild HE and Brightside. This campaign is far from over. I think this is pretty much just the beginning. Standalone have a current petition to allow Australian students to claim housing benefit over summer, which is something they currently can't do. So once I'm off stage, I'll tweet the link to that, and it'll be great if you could sign it and share it and distribute it. Another strand of my work has been disseminating the findings of the QTI POC, which stands for Queer, Trans, Intersex People of Colour. So we did lots of roundtables last year. I've worked to ensure that the Faith Caucus is still a firm part of the LGBT+ conference's agenda, and that we had more QTI POC inclusion. So we had the fantastic Lady Phil, the founder of Black Pride, as our keynote speaker at conference this year. And we held a workshop for the first time on how to tackle racism in the LGBT+ community. Further to this, I have been consulting with the QTI POC Caucus and the LGBT+ reps on the NUS Black Students campaign when it comes to the name change of their campaign and how that would then affect our campaign. I've continued our support for the Save Kelechi campaign, which has included logistical support for Kelechi via encouraging the signing of her petition and her YouCaring page and making sure she's got advocates of legal meetings. And some of you may have seen recently that Kelechi was granted asylum after a long and hard battle with the Home Office. And it's due to the actions of all her allies in this campaign, people in this room today, and NUS liberation campaigns, that we've been relentless in our support with Kelechi. I've also organised with the African Rainbow Family to call on the Nigerian government to stop deporting UK citizens via charter flights. And we demonstrated outside the Nigerian embassy and organised a petition for this. In terms of work with the nations, I attended NUS Wales LGBT+ conference last year and helped them with a workshop on QTI POC issues. I went to Belfast Pride last year, which was actually my first time ever in Northern Ireland, and I've been supporting the various nations officers with their motion to their conferences to lobby NUS to actually pay part-time liberation officers for their labour, which is really important. This campaign has also been financially supporting our NUS USI LGBT counterparts to fight for marriage equality in Northern Ireland and other bits and pieces of work. So some miscellaneous work I've been doing includes helping unions write or rewrite their trans inclusion policies, submitting motions to their respective decision-making bodies, attending the first ever High Wycombe Pride, aiding unions to set up their own LGBT+ societies and networks, and helping to run Demo HQ to provide social media, press and RST support during the free education demonstration. We're supposed to do a little bit about policy here, but I completely agree with Rachel, like, it's just BS that because we're liberation officers, we're completely autonomous. We shouldn't really have to be rubber stamped by you, but apparently we do. So I'll just quickly rattle off some really rad policy that we passed. Commonwealth decriminalisation motion, supporting students who are unable to come out, supporting the decriminalisation of sex work, fighting against anti-fascism, making sure that Pride stays as a community thing, trans-misogyny in the Gender Recognition Act, bringing an end to conversion therapy in the UK, homelessness in the LGBTI community, defending women who love women's spaces, fighting for marriage equality in Northern Ireland. This motion is on bi-erasure, disabled students, trans reproductive rights, mutual aid being better than self-care, QTI POC mental health, LGBTI plus body positivity, bringing sex ed back, and much, much more. Thank you for listening.
Oh, there it is. It's already up. That's great. Okay, this has been a great year. It's really good. At the start of the year, we looked at, one second, sorry, I'm just getting notes, our Benny and the Blood Ban campaign. Now, in my previous year, I was the NUS Scotland LGBT plus officer, and that was a campaign that I started there just basically to critique and campaign against the blood ban that's in place for queer people. But in doing that, in that campaign, we didn't only talk about cis-gay men and how they should be able to give blood. We talked about all queer people. But actually, when we got the win in that campaign very early on this year...
That's time. Delegate, please.
Oh, no, we get 5 minutes each.
It's between you both.
We weren't aware of that.
No, it's not.
Oh. We literally weren't aware of that. We were told 5 minutes.
Like, we're 2 full-time officers. We should both get 2 sets of 5 minutes.
Can we speak?
Do you want to hear me? Like, do you want to hear what I've been up to?
Come on.
Oh, this is beautiful. This is like students at National Conference.
You can carry on.
Oh, sorry? Yeah, okay, that's brilliant. Right, okay, Ben the Blood Ban, which was a campaign about getting rid of the blood ban and making sure that anyone can donate to give blood without discrimination. Not only did we do that for queer people, but people from sub-Saharan African communities were also banned. Sex workers were also banned, but for life. So for most other groups, it was a 1-year ban. For sex workers, it's for life. All of these groups have now been put down to a 3-month deferment period. Now, that campaign's still not done, but we're getting close, and we've made some brilliant strides on that, and looking forward to see what NUS will next do to combat that and make sure that that 3-month goes down to a 0-month based on individual risk, which is what many European countries are following now, and is what our one should do too. Sex Work released a series of, well, we released a toolkit, and we'll be releasing more resources on students doing sex work. The resource that we've got up right now on NUS Connect is very much around how can you campaign for decriminalisation, how can you support student sex workers on your campus, and we'll be doing more of that. We've also got a motion coming to this conference today, Welfare 107 motion about the criminalisation of, the decriminalisation of sex work and supporting student sex workers. About 82% of sex workers that have been killed are migrant women. However, in trafficking, a lot of the cases that there is no distinction between people who have been so-called trafficked and brothel keepers, and as a result, everyone gets prosecuted, and it isn't good. And also, 88% of trans people who are sex workers and have disclosed their occupation in Europe where sex workers were murdered as well. So, and also on top of that, 1 in 20 students do sex work based on our previous research around this, so it's absolutely important that we continue to do that, and we continue to do more work around sex work and supporting student sex workers. Supporting the nations, we've done a lot of that. We adopted policy to make sure that, to campaign to make sure that we pay our nation's liberations officers, which is incredibly important. They have a whole huge bit of work. We've got Corner up in Northern Ireland who is leading like the Student Equal Marriage campaign. We've got Leo in Scotland who's doing lots of stuff around GRA. We've got the Welsh officers, Jasper and Hannah, who's doing so much around health, and it's not fair that we expect them to work for free, and that's what Nation Liberations officers do, whilst often doing their studies and also doing part-time work most of the time as well. Making political, we've been standing up to prides that have been forgetting their past, forgetting their radical origins, forgetting that they're political, forgetting that they're supposed to be community orientated as well. And we've stood up to Glasgow Pride by doing direct action. Oh, we're in Glasgow, lol. And also Student Pride as well by writing out and making sure that we reopen discussions and make sure that we have a conversation about making sure Pride is political, especially if it is a student Pride. And also Bucks sports policy. This has been really actually good, and I want to shout about this a lot more. We've been working with UCU, not only in supporting them in their efforts of strikes and to actually get a pension at the end of the day, but they've also been helping us in making sure that sports policy is inclusive for trans and intersex people. Competing in competitive sports in Bucks is almost impossible. You need to wait for hormones, which is a year, then you need to wait a year to be on hormones, then you need to pay to get the medical proof. So by the time that you've actually waited and got on that and done that by the end of the day, bear in mind it can take 3 years to wait for hormones in some parts of the UK, even higher. It's been fantastic working alongside of them, Student Worker Solidarity, and I really hope that that effort gets continued and we can actually make sure that we have sport not based on biology, but based on self-identification and what you define into your gender rather being pushed into a box. But that's me. Welcome to Glasgow. I hope you have fun. Have some Iron Brew and deep fried Mars bar. Bye.
All right, thank you very much. Because the liberation campaigns are autonomous, these are just the notes. We do not need to move on to a vote to adopt them. Next, can I please call up the trans campaign officer, please?
Cool. Hi, conference. I'm Jess Bradley, first-time delegate, first-time speaker, and first-time elected full-time trans officer. More wiggles, please. I deserve it. We don't have any policy to adopt because we haven't had our conference yet, so I'm going to spend the next 5 minutes indoctrinating you into the trans agenda. When I came into this job, I didn't know what to expect. I'd never been a SAB before. I didn't have a WhatsApp. And I didn't know the revolution had to be risk assessed. And to be honest, I'm still not sure the revolution has to be risk assessed. I knew that being the first full-time trans officer would be difficult. I walked into an organization which still has a lot to learn about trans issues. I was worried that because there were so many barriers put into place to getting a trans officer in the first place, that the role simply existing would be seen as my greatest achievement, regardless of what I actually did in that role. I was worried that people would want the role to exist, but not the political challenges that comes with a person actually filling it. Conference, I'm still worried. I'm not just worried about tokenization, I'm worried because this year we've seen a huge spike in transphobia and transmisogyny in society, and still, despite challenging transmisogyny being a priority campaign of mine, we still have people in this organization who clearly have no idea what that word even means. This year, I've been hounded by the press. I've had multiple meetings having to be cancelled because the event organizers can't guarantee my safety. I've had my accounts hacked. I've had my address put online. I've had to tell the kids not to answer the door in case somebody who would harm us would be on the other side. And conference, despite all this, the trans campaign has absolutely smashed it this year. And it's no thanks, in part, due to my committee, my second place Eden, who have all been very supportive and active this year. So I started out this year with 3 priorities, but unfortunately the government didn't consult me on the review of the Gender Recognition Act, so I had to raise it to 4 priorities. So to go through them, healthcare. So if anyone knows a trans person in the room, you will know that trans healthcare, access to trans healthcare is resoundingly bad. We have a great source of inequality for trans people, gatekeeping, waiting times, lack of cultural competency. So there was a big NHS consultation this year, and the trans campaign encouraged community engagement through direct action, but also through responding administratively to that consultation. We've also ran healthcare advocacy sessions across the UK. Because the healthcare system is so complicated and inaccessible, we've had to teach people how to navigate that system. We also, with the welfare zone, as a joint project, launched the first student drug survey, which, in my opinion, given the stereotypes of students as massive drug users, it's absolutely wild that there has been no drug survey across the UK before now, and that is something that we have done. So that's been done. On to transmisogyny. So for people who in the room who don't know what transmisogyny is the intersection of transphobia and misogyny that is experienced by trans women and some non-binary people. So you might have seen in the news, there's been basically an onslaught week after week after week of newspaper articles in the Daily Mail, in the Sun, in the Times, talking about trans women, monstering us, and that's really, I have a lot of words to say about that I can't probably say on stage, so I won't. But we've done a lot of writing in the media, challenging mainstream narratives around known platforms, working on the Gender Recognition Act, and challenging transmisogyny in workshops across the UK. If you still want to do them, get involved, ask me afterwards. We've done a lot of work around prison abolition. So prisons are a site of trauma and violence. Trans people especially face this as people who are housed in the wrong gender facilities.
That's time, delegate, please.
Wow, I
That's
talk
time, please.
slower than I thought.
That's time,
Thank you.
Please. Thank you. Can I ask the women's officer to come up next, please? And
Hi everyone. I'm just going to go straight into all the work that we've been doing, and by we I mean the rest of the Women's Campaign and Sarah Lissoy, my NEC second place. So first and foremost, I paired up with the Black Students Campaign and the Federation of Student Islamic Societies to commission a research into the experiences of Muslim students in education. The report was released last week, and you can access it online, but what it found was that 1 in 3 Muslim students had experienced some form of abuse during their time at university or in further education colleges. Given the responses were so gendered, we've also commissioned a separate briefing into the experiences of Muslim women in higher education and further education, because they experience disproportionate levels of abuse. Most recently, I wrote a piece for Muslim Council of Britain's report on Muslims and integration in the UK. I provided a piece on Muslim women's perspective, so speaking specifically about the barriers that they have within their communities, but also from outside their communities. So talking about systematic inequalities such as Muslim women facing the greatest pay gap in the whole country, facing the highest levels of employment in the country, and accessing just a discrimination when it comes to job applications in general. In response to the Employment Opportunities and Muslims in the UK report, we also paired up with the Federation of Islamic Societies to host the Muslim Women in Leadership Conference as part of Islamophobia Awareness Month celebrations, and thank you so much to Robbie for contributing to that in terms of his campaign budget. We've also hosted a gendered Islamophobia tour, so we've gone around to different universities and unions talking about what it is, talking about the public harassment, kind of that Muslim women experience. So we visited Cambridge Students' Union, Middlesex, Oxford Brookes, Manchester Met. We were most recently invited by students at Edinburgh University as part of the student occupations to deliver a kind of a plenary workshop on what gendered Islamophobia is, and we'll be visiting other unions throughout the months that I have left. Ilyas and I actually have also been invited to contribute a chapter to Irene Zempi and Awan Ali's book on Islamophobia. So we'll be talking about how it manifests in education, and we'll be submitting that in May. I've also been part of the roundtables for the Higher Education Funding Council, who were approving bids on hate crime projects that universities and FE colleges were applying for, but also projects on sexual harassment and sexual violence. The Women's Campaign also contributed to Black Students' Handbook on Preventing Prevent. We were looking at the way in which the government instrumentalizes Muslim women in the counter-extremism strategy, and we co-hosted the Students or Suspects tour. We kicked it off at UCL with the BME officer, Io. The flagship project for the Women's Campaign has been raising awareness of student staff misconduct. As it currently exists, 1 in 3 universities don't have any policies talking about student staff harassment. We commissioned the first research in the UK looking into students' experiences of harassment at the hands, that is perpetuated by lecturers and academics. We received just around 2,000 responses. We hosted focus groups, and the report will be released in the coming week. We've also been invited, I believe, to sit on the UK working group on producing policies on student staff harassment and what universities can do to support students who have experienced it at the hands of lecturers. Most recently, we've also been invited to attend the Violence Against Women and Girls Stakeholders meeting that is being hosted by the Home Office, and we've been invited to submit evidence as part of the government's consultation on the domestic abuse bill that the domestic violence bill that will be put forward. Sorry about that. We will be opening up calls for student unions to submit their evidence, which we will then also be a part of. Sorry. I've also spoken with Ali Milani and Emily Chapman into commissioning research into the prevalence of domestic violence in further education. I've met with Vanita Sundaram and Graham Towell from Durham University and York University, and we have begun putting together questions for our survey, and we will be disseminating that by the time I leave the organisation. And I'm very much looking forward to that. Sorry, I just thought I'd put that out there. As some of you may know, we're also currently, Sarah and I are currently in the process of putting together a reproductive justice handbook. We've asked Liberation officers to contribute to that, and also NEC members, and we'll have that released by the end of April. Rachel actually hosted political education days, and we contributed a session on reproductive justice. We also submitted a motion of solidarity to support the Repeal the 8th campaign, because as we know, the referendum is happening soon. We've also submitted a motion to NUS Women's Conference, because we believe that USI Women's Campaign has done terrific work in terms of campaigning on abortion rights in Northern Ireland. So we've submitted a motion on providing financial resources to the Women's Officer and the Women's Campaign there. I need to start speeding up. Sarah, my NEC second place, has put together a workshop on self and collective care for black women, and she's currently going around doing a tour of UK universities and FE colleges. We also, as part of Black History Month celebration, put together resources on migrant women in detention centres, and you can look it up on NUS Connect. This year also marks the 50-year anniversary of the International Students' Riots, and we've paired up with a postgraduate student campaign, and we're hosting an exhibition. We're also asking for student activists to actually contribute to that.
That's time, delegate, please.
Okay, there's more, but I'll tweet about it.
Time,
Thank
delegate,
you.
please. Thank you to all the Liberation groups. Right, next we've got 2 statements to hear. The first one from Sheffield Students' Union, and the second one's going to be from DPC. Can I ask someone from Sheffield to come up, please? Yes, I see you over there. Thank you, delegate. Please state your name, and you have 2 minutes.
Gabe Milne, Sheffield SU. Conference, I'd like to thank you for your support yesterday. However, I'm tired of anti-Semitism creeping into a major political party which constantly fails to live up to its professed ideals of anti-racism. Conference, I'm fed up of anti-Semitism being dismissed as a smear, Jewish voices being ignored and belittled, and being told that they cannot define their own oppression. Anti-Semitism is being opposed by some, but not by all. And by ignorance or indifference, too many people have turned a blind eye. The brave people who gathered in London 2 days ago must be shown complete solidarity by the student movement to end this pernicious bigotry. Enough is enough, and this ends now. Jewish students will not be silenced. We weren't silenced yesterday, nor today, nor ever. Not in the student movement, not in the Labour Party, or anywhere. We will end this together now.
Thank you very much. Can we hear from DPC next, please? Can you please state your name, and you have 2 minutes.
Radhi Langer, DPC. Conference. Yesterday, a statement regarding anti-Semitism within the Labour Party was due to be read out. Clearly, this did not happen. But let me be clear. As a student, as a member of DPC, and as a proud Jew, what happened yesterday was a complete and utter disgrace. Regardless of what happened, I want to make something clear. We as DPC stand with Jewish students against anti-Semitism regardless of where it manifests itself. We will work tirelessly to ensure Jewish voices are heard loud and clear. We understand the frustration from delegates and observers. In fact, we share it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, guys. All right, you won't see me for the rest of the day now. It's been a pleasure.
Yes, we move on to Welfare Zone next, and we're just waiting for Robbie to come up to do the chairing. Yes, I see Robbie. And you can move faster than that. Can we just start the video, Robbie? Yeah, we can start the video. Take your time.
It's no secret students are facing a mental health crisis. When you elected me last year, I promised to make mental health a priority, and I've done just that. I worked with the Union of UEA students to FOI 133 universities across the UK to find out about their mental health provision for our members. The result was truly shocking, but just not surprising. Only 22% of them had a mental health strategy in place for their students. In response, I produced campaigns guidance for SUs in FE and HE so that they can lobby their institutions for whole institutional review, ensuring that students' mental health is front and centre of their strategic planning. I've constantly brought to the forefront of panel discussions, sector meetings and to UUK the need for culturally competent mental health services. This year I secured mental health first aid training to be offered to students' unions via the NUS Learning Academy at a massively discounted rate and even cheaper for FE and small and specialist unions. Mental health first aid training can be literally life-saving, and I'm so pleased that so many unions now have the opportunity to be trained and to ensure that they're there when students may need us most. This year has been hugely successful for the Alcohol Impact Programme, and on the 22nd of February in Leeds, we hosted our first ever Students and Alcohol Conference, where over 120 delegates learned, discussed and collaborated on everything to do with students and alcohol and ensuring we are creating healthier, safer and more inclusive campus environments. Together with Jess, the NUS Trans Officer, we launched the first ever national comprehensive study into students' drug use in order to ensure that our students' unions are better supporting their students who use drugs, beginning to reduce harm and ensuring they are able to stay in education. There was some really good news for students in the London Plan, which is the Mayor's strategy for housing in the capital. I successfully lobbied for NUS's affordability criteria to be applied to universities and not just private providers. This means that 35% of all new student accommodation in London will be set at an affordable reduced rent, up to 55% of the maximum student loan, and reserved for students from low-income households. There are over 3,000 new beds in London every year, which means that now over 1,000 of them will be set at an affordable rate. Following the horrific tragedy at Grenfell, concerns were raised over the potential use of dangerous cladding on the exterior of student halls and the implications for fire safety. In response to this, I produced guidance for students and students' unions on the implications of students living in high-rise accommodation. This year, I launched the second Homes Fit for Study report, but this time with a focus on fuel poverty. We learned that significant numbers of students are living in cold, damp homes that they just can't afford to heat. On the back of that, I put together a collection of resources to help SUs help their students in fuel poverty. Alongside the International Students Officer, we co-launched an updated version of the University Guarantor Scheme Guide, with a particular focus on international students and estranged students. I published a Tenants' Rights Charter, which lays out the rights that students have whilst living in the private rented sector in a clear and easy format. This way, students can check if their landlord is doing anything dodgy and can alert their students' union if they need help. This year, we have continued to see a rise of hate crime on our campuses, including graffiti such as swastikas and one incident of a Nazi flag being draped on a university campus. That's why this year I'm extremely proud that NUS has partnered with the Union of Jewish Students and the Holocaust Education Trust on a pioneering project launched for Holocaust Memorial Day called Our Living Memory. Together, we produced and sent out to students' unions a resource guide on how to commemorate Holocaust Memorial Day, including how to invite and bring a speaker onto your campus. I was extremely honoured to have invited and welcomed Marla Trivich, a Holocaust survivor, to share her testimony and her experiences during the Holocaust at NUS Zones Conference and launch our campaign, Our Living Memory. After continuously raising awareness of the prevalence of anti-Semitism within society, on campus and within our student movement, I was extremely pleased to hear the announcement by the Minister for Housing, Communities and Local Government that they will be providing over £144,000 to UJS and HET on a funded trip for over 200 students' leaders to visit Auschwitz next year. I look forward, on behalf of NUS, in supporting these two organisations in this initiative. For National Interfaith Week in November, we teamed up with the Interfaith Network, the leading interfaith charity in the UK, to provide student coffee conversations, another way of participating in Interfaith Week. And this contributed to the largest Interfaith Week ever. We know that as a student movement, we've not always got it right when it comes to social media. That's why this year I ring-fenced money for a campaign that will actively promote better digital behaviour in our movement. It will emphasise the power of positive in the digital space and help us get there collectively. The best part about the campaign is that it's being co-created by students and creative directors to develop an idea that's at the heart of student voice and champions healthy debate and positive engagement.
Now, conference, this would usually be the part where I invite your vice president to the stage, but there's a plot twist, because it's election time. I tried to make that so camp and funny, but you just didn't go with me, conference. Okay, so we're going to have now the presidential election, so we will be back after the access break at 11:30, and I have 101 Spice Girl facts for you, conference, and a Twitter poll. Just you wait.
So morning conference, we're just setting up. So just to quickly give you a little bit of housekeeping before we officially start the National President Conference election. Once the election starts, there won't be any movement in or out of conference floor. So if you are needing to go outside, I encourage you to take your ballot paper with you. There will be a ballot box at the info point, but once we start the election, you will be able to leave conference floor, but you won't be able to come back in. So if you are intending to go out during the election, conference floor, you need to take your ballot paper with you, and you'll have to cast your vote at the info point. And just a reminder, when casting your vote, you need to have both your delegate voting card and your yellow wristband. We will need to see both to be able to collect your ballot paper. Can I have a bit of quiet on conference floor? I'm trying to give you instructions so you know how to cast your votes and do what your students have elected you to do. So quiet, please, on conference floor. Quiet, please, on conference floor. Thank you. So reminder, once the election starts, you will be able to leave conference floor, but you won't be able to return. So if you do leave, take your ballot paper with you. To cast your vote, you will need to have both your, I think it's green delegate voting card and also show your yellow wristband. If you only have one of those, you will not be able to cast your vote. If you have neither of those, you will not be able to cast your vote. If you have both of those, you will be able to cast your vote. Yay. So I'm going to put some seats up on the stage for the candidates to sit here. So can I have the 3 candidates for National President election? Because obviously Ron doesn't get a vote, doesn't get a seat, and we will start shortly. So me again, conference with a bit more housekeeping. So again, please be quiet whilst I go through this so that you'll know how to cast your votes. So as a reminder, for all elections, we cast your vote in numerical preference. So numbers 1 through to how many you want to cast. Please do not put any symbols or any star shapes or any heart shapes saying how much you love me or my team elections. Just put numbers. If you change your preference, please make sure that you clearly cross out that and just have a clear indication of what your numerical preference is for that candidate. If it's not clear, we won't be able to count it when we're doing the counts. So numbers, not symbols. I've had a number of complaints about access issues in terms of campaigning, both in the venue and in some of the hotels. So I'm asking everyone to be mindful of access issues in their campaigning, both in the venue and in the hotels. A reminder from last night's informal hustings, no whooping. That is an access issue for some delegates. And that's it for now. So remember, numbers, not symbols. So candidates, you will each speak for 5 minutes. There won't be any questions. You will speak in order of, you'll speak in alphabetical order based on your surname. Please take account of the traffic lights, because that will indicate when your time is up. And I will say time, candidate time, and the sound will be cut on your microphone, but not mine. So the first candidate you will hear from is Sahaya James. Sahaya, you have 5 minutes.
Yeah, let's go. Cool. Hello? Okay, conference. What an incredible past few weeks. We have witnessed the biggest wave of student action since 2010. Our movement has been out in force in the snow, in the sun, showing support to our staff in their fight for fair pensions. Students have organised local and national demonstrations at the drop of a hat, ferried homemade food to pickets, started occupations in 24 campuses right across the country. A special shout out to those that took place right here in Glasgow and Strathclyde. And it hasn't just stopped at the strike. I've come to conference from an occupation at the University of London HQ, where students from over half a dozen campuses are occupying in solidarity with outsourced and exploited migrant workers. Honestly, we should be so proud of what we have all achieved in the past few weeks. This is the beginning of a revitalized mass movement of students and workers in the building and education system for the many, not the few, from the bottom up. But now, over a month into the UCU dispute, I asked the NUS leadership this: where have you been? While our lecturers and our education system have been under attack, what we've had is silence, despite a democratic mandate to take action. Oh wait, sorry. There was that one article that went up on the NUS website. But let's get real. No one reads the NUS website because our national union is failing to engage its members. I have seen this firsthand from my days as an FE College Preston, as an activist, as an officer at a small and specialist arts university. And I know I'm not the only one who's felt let down. When I visited Scotland, I discovered colleges and campuses completely ignored by NUS UK. When hundreds of student activists were mobilising for the free education demo on a shoestring budget, the NUS Preston banned our NEC from even discussing a motion of support. At a time when institutional racism is rife, when women students are facing a crisis of sexual assault and fascists are gaining confidence on our campuses, the NUS Preston is slashing the budgets of our liberation officers without consultation. Conference, it is a damning record. The student movement is advancing beneath NUS's feet, and we are missing the opportunity to grasp new possibilities and futures for our education system and society that were thrown open by last year's general election. But with some ambition, you and I know the incredible things we can achieve together. We could scrap tuition fees once and for all, for international students and home students, undergraduates and postgraduates. We could finally end the racist and repressive prevent agenda and work with campus trade unions to fight the Islamophobia that's poisoning society. We could unionize and win the living wage for all apprentices. And while we're at it, let's do the same for all students who work. We deserve fair wages to cover the ridiculous costs of study we face. We could take on our institutions and the private landlords who rip us off every day by building grassroots tenant unions and growing rent strikes. Conference, this is how we tackle student poverty. We are all here because we believe in the transformative potential of NUS. But if we're serious about winning, we need to be serious about fighting too. And we know the world we fight for does not end on our campuses. Recently, when my university was exposed as being complicit in plans that would see the local Latin American community pushed out in favor of luxury housing for the super rich, students and the community came together to demand social housing. And despite my university trying to discipline me for taking part in this campaign, we have already started winning. They've doubled social housing provision, and we are fighting for more. Across the UK, students are taking action against the occupation of Palestine, the ongoing assault against Afrin. They're taking on the toxic fossil fuel companies causing devastation in the global south. They're fighting for freedom of movement and for a world that welcomes refugees. Conference, we need an education system that gives us the power and the tools to change the world. When I talk about free education, I'm not just talking about scrapping fees. I'm talking about our institutions being run in our interests, not the VCs and principals earning $500,000 a year. I'm talking about curriculums shaped not by big businesses, but by social need and social good. And to achieve that, we need a fighting NUS. For the many, not the few, for the students, not the hacks, for the movement, not the egos, but no conference. For solidarity with our staff, not inaction and defeat.
Time, candidate, time. Time, candidate, time. Time, candidate, time. And no whooping on conference floor. Remember what I said at the start. No whooping on conference floor. That candidate was Sahaya James. The next candidate is Shakira Martin. Shakira, you have 5 minutes.
Shakira Martin, NEC. My NUS family. I said it before and I will say it again. I was never meant to make it to college, let alone to conference. But education gave me a chance and my students' union saved me. It gave me the confidence to know what's going on around me. It gave me the confidence to ask questions, to challenge authority. It gave me power. So I was so happy, proud and excited to be elected your national president last year. Like I said, it wasn't about me or NEC. It's about the international postgrad isolated and struggling with no support. It's about the student that misses seminars and socials and deadlines and dates because mental health services just aren't there. It's about those that can't get in and those that can't get on. When I won, I never thought it was going to be easy. And I know that for many of you, I was a risk. But I kept my promise. Real work on race equity, delivered. The biggest student poverty commission getting grants on the agenda, delivered. Rebuilding our reputation, throwing shades on the radio and sass on Sky News, delivered. Working on street safety and life crime for young people, delivered. I said I would listen. And students have been telling me that money is the #1 barrier getting them in and getting them on. But yet we see VCs and principals setting the funding agenda, and as their salaries soar, the press and the parliament, we let press and parliament ignore the scandal of student poverty. So this year we've decided to rewrite the rules of NUS campaigning, getting real on student poverty, swapping the tired tactics for real student voices, bringing in partners and experts to form policy ideas to end the scandal of students' poverty and students struggling to afford housing, food or books. But now it's time to switch things up. Take our demands to the decision makers, from the classroom to the cabinet, a real movement involving course reps, activists, volunteers and officers. Winning regulations that forces unis and colleges to reduce costs, quadrupling the apprenticeship wage, demanding discount on travel, a minimum living income for all students and the return of grants. But I also said I would learn, and you've taught me all I need to know about what students care about: the cost of books, affording travel, getting their marks back and getting the good results. So just like you do every day, I've been out and about talking to the bigwigs, getting real on students' rights. We got change on the Students' Loan Company, got bigger block grants for FE, won the voice in the Quality Code and demanded action on mental health and attainment gap. But there's more to do. A national students' rights survey from everything from Erasmus to student appeals, automatic voter registration, so whenever there's an election called, we are ready. An NUS that gives tools and tactics and arguments and plans to agitate the change and win on campuses. But I also said I would lead. When I took over NUS, it was a mess. Just like you do every day, we're starting to make big internal changes, cutting back on costs, getting real intern on your priorities, thinking how to boost your income so you can do your job. And we need real change, putting you in the tent of NUS turnaround, a proper service and benefit statement for SUs, a new way to develop and debate issues and policies constructively, supports and briefings and training for everyone in the student movement. That's what we can do if we get real. A strong, smart campaigning union where students are powerful, fit for the fight and fit for their future. There's one thing, though, I want to talk about. I know for many of you, knife crime is when your cutlery goes missing in your kitchen drawer. But where I'm from, it's real. Stabbings, domestic violence, gang culture, kids getting in with the wrong crowds, getting in trouble, kids dying on our street. Our street, whose streets? Our street. But I don't know why this is happening. And I know for sure, and I'm not sure, but all I know for certain, they weren't born to want to do this. There is evil in the world. There's always has been, and we can't do nothing about that. But there's violence in our colleges, racism in our universities, there's bullying in our workplaces, and we can do something about that. There's not enough books or chairs or spaces or advice in our system. There's not enough teachers in our schools. There's not enough counsellors in our campuses. There is not nearly enough money in our colleges, and we can do something about that. We can do better. We must do better, and we will do better. An NUS that is totally obsessed with making education in this country better. Conference, I know I ain't your typical president, but I can promise, and I can't promise I'm perfect, but what I can say, I will give all for my kids, my membership, and the next generation. And I will never stop trying to make education a real option for everyone. So I'll tell you what you do. Tick Shakira, vote #1 for president. This speech is dedicated to my cousin Gerald and his children. I love you, cuz.
That candidate was Shakira Martin. Thank you, conference. Please come to order. Please sit down. The next candidate is Momin Saqib. Momin, you have 5 minutes.
Momin Saqib, President of King's College London Students' Union, standing to be your next NUS President. The road I took to this platform, standing here before all of you today, was not easy. I grew up surrounded by extreme poverty, where seeing coffins of young children was a norm. Helping those affected by violence was a norm. Obtaining an education through great difficulty was a norm. And I cannot forget those memories. And because of those memories, I was compelled to pursue an education. At my first attempt, I didn't even make it. I flunked my A-levels. Every university I had applied to rejected me. It was a defeat, yes, but it did not crush me. And my commitment to a better society gave me the courage to persevere. I worked in an orphanage and helped children whose parents had been killed in terrorist attacks because I know how it feels to lose a loved one. I co-founded Tayyiba, a charity which has helped over 8,000 women and children access the water they so desperately need, and then I did my A-levels again and got into King's. I came from London 2 days ago, but it's taken 4 years to get here. I went from helping freshers move their luggage into accommodation to the president of my students' union. I've doubled affordable accommodation places at KCL, including 345 for international students for the first time because poverty is global. I've almost doubled student engagement in my SU elections in my year as VP activities. I have done a lot to change the lives of thousands at King's. So I am not just running to win. I am not an NUS hack. I am just running to take this national. I am running to be your president at a time of crisis, at a time where the NUS must fight for free education, against austerity-driven cuts to further education, against the privatization of our public services, including the NHS. We must combat the racist, Islamophobic prevent duty and continue the fight to liberate us all. Women, LGBT people, disabled people, people of color, migrants, workers, refugees, and others, we must face Brexit in 2019. We need a fighting student movement that will not only raise our voice in the halls of power, but take on the streets to win our struggle. And yet, I don't see one in the NUS. I want to take you all on a journey. This February, with little else but the support of their families and a living room, approximately 20 angry teenage students started a movement in Florida. As a result, thousands across the USA have marched for an end to gun violence, and there are hundreds of us sitting here representing 7 million students across the UK in this time of struggle, and the NUS does nothing. The average student is £50,000 in debt. Where is the NUS? The mental health crisis is literally killing students. Where is the NUS? The outrage over the sorry state of our education has led to occupations at nearly 25 universities, including my own. Where is the NUS? Conference, I am disappointed. Now here's a vision of the NUS that we can build. Imagine an NUS that is more than just the NUS Extra card, that is more than bureaucrats sitting in conference rooms with management, an NUS that the average student can connect with, an NUS that fights for free education and pragmatically tackles value for money, an NUS that tackles the ills of society with effective liberation campaigns and provides resources to all students, not just sabbatical officers and activists. Now this is my NUS. This could be your NUS too. You might be hearing from me for the first time. I may not be your friend. I may not be in a faction or a WhatsApp group. But as long as your values and principles connect with mine, we can build a strong fighting student movement. Conference, I urge you to take the right decision and vote with conscience. Let's do this together. For all of us, vote Momin Saqib #1 for NUS President. Thank you.
Thank you. That candidate was Momin Saqib. There is also reopen nominations. Candidates, you can now leave the stage and go back to conference floor. So, conference, it's now your turn to cast your vote. So, anyone not on the conference floor, but who does have both their ballot paper and their yellow delegate wristband and their green voting delegate card can vote at InfoPoint. Please, just a reminder, cast your votes in numerical preference. So, from number 1 onwards for the 4 candidates. Can everyone remain seated, please? So the only people who should be walking about are the candidates returning to their seats. Everyone else should be and must be seated. So how this is going to work is once you've all completed your ballot paper for National President, I see some delegates stood up and moving around. Please take a seat. And that includes the delegate who's near the end but not actually on a seat. You need to take a seat and not stand or crouch in the aisle. Yes, I can see you. You need to take a seat. Take a seat. Great. So as I said, how this is going to work is once you've filled out your ballot papers in numerical preference, we will be releasing you by rows to go out through the back. You will need to both show your green voting delegate card and your yellow wristband to be able to deposit your completed ballot paper in the ballot box. And a reminder for anyone outside of conference floor, there is a ballot box at the info point. 1 sec. Okay, so I'm about to start releasing you in blocks, and just a reminder that there is an access break at 11:15 and conference floor reopens at 11:30. So the far block to my left, you can begin to leave. So as a reminder, you need to show both your green delegate card and your yellow wristband to be able to deposit your ballot box. Equally, the far block to my right, you can begin to leave through that far door. And again, you need to show your green delegate card and your yellow wristband to be able to cast your vote. For the candidates, you're entitled to have an observer in the count, which will happen immediately after conference floor is emptied. If your observer is in the room, please get them to come to where Rodri is at the front of conference floor. And for any candidate observers who are not on conference floor, please wait outside Gala 2 for my arrival. So a polite reminder, please don't leave your ballot papers, etc. on conference floor, because if you do lose them, then there are a certain number of conference hours before you can get them back. Equally, if you lose your ballot paper, then you don't get to vote in any more elections. So treat them like treasure, hold them dear to you, and keep them on your person. The middle back row, back block, I would encourage you to maybe split in half and go some to the left, some to the right. So for everyone in the front rows, you're just going to have to wait a little bit longer, so I do apologize. We're just waiting for everyone to kind of clear out. It's not my fault, honest.
Okay, conference. We are now going to come back with accountability with your Vice President Welfare. Can I ask your VP Welfare to come to the stage for accountability, please? Conference, can I ask please that you sat down and ready for these accountability questions, please? Thank you very much. Also, happy birthday to Hadiza from Plymouth and Fee Wood from the NEC, whose birthday it is today. So, happy birthday to you both.
Do I get, Robbie, do I get the time? What does the colour code mean?
Hello, hello, hello.
Hello, conference. If you could just settle down and take your seat, and then we can start the questions. So the first question, have there been any key accomplishments in your year as VP Welfare? Second question, do you think that you have done enough to tackle sexual harassment and sexual assault on campuses? And which liberation campaigns have you contributed to, and how have you supported liberation officers?
Hi, conference. Izzy, your VP Welfare. So I will take the questions in the order they came in. So first of all, what are my key accomplishments? I guess like my video laid out what the main things I've been working on this year, which I've really, really enjoyed doing, and hopefully they have lasting impact on students. But I guess I'll just go through some of the key ones as well, seeing as you asked the question. So mental health was my key priority this year, and it will always be my key priority for students. So what we did, we FOI'd, we freedom of information to 133 universities in the UK on whether they have a mental health strategy, because the only way we're going to solve this mental health crisis is by taking a strategic approach to it and actually solving the causes of it rather than actually just kind of putting sticking plasters on it. So we FOI'd them, and what came out was that 22% of universities in the UK have a mental health strategy in their institution, which is absolutely appalling. So what we did, we created guidance and we convinced the UK to take a 5-year strategic strategy on mental health, which has never been done before. We also got mental health first aid training through the Learning Academy, which is also really exciting. And we've made that cheaper and more affordable for FE and small and specialist unions. We're now looking at how we can roll that out long-term within NUS, so we are kind of now working to offer it in-house to make that cost even cheaper, but that takes a bit more work, but we wanted to make sure that that is in as soon as possible. Alcohol and drugs is also something that I've been working on, and it's been mentioned a few times, which is really cool. But myself and the trans officer, we launched the first ever national comprehensive study into student drug use, and with a specific part reserved for trans students, which again has never been done before. Because as we know, the trans community often face greater challenges accessing healthcare and stuff and social support, and stuff about the Misuse of Drugs Act kind of really can target trans students and has the potential to actually criminalise them, which is really problematic. So hopefully our research will be able to change kind of the attitudes around students' drug use, help prevention, help harm reduction, and help students' unions. One of my big wins this year, again, has been on housing. So we convinced Sadiq Khan, the London mayor, to finally win on student housing, not just in the private rented sector, but for university halls as well, which is the first time that has been done. So now 35% of all student accommodation in London will now be set at an affordable rate, which is really, really exciting. And that's 55% of the maximum student loan, which will save thousands of students money every single year. And I'm really, really proud to have pioneered that project. And now we're looking about how we can roll that out nationally. We've been doing a lot of work, actually, which didn't come into my video, which is something I wanted to mention, and Jess briefly mentioned it, because I didn't put it in my video because we weren't sure where we stood on it, but for the first time ever, with myself and Jess, a trans officer, we lobbied the ANAC Unipol code, which kind of regulates purpose-built student accommodation, so halls, to commit to offering trans-inclusive accommodation for the first time ever, so trans students will be able to use bathrooms, facilities, and toilets where they feel most comfortable, so that's really exciting. It has never been done before. And hopefully that will be able to change trans students' lives and their experiences and accommodation, something that was raised to me quite clearly at the beginning. Other things that I didn't mention in my video, I've been working with Unison on the experiences of healthcare students who've kind of been subject to the finance reforms, including moving onto a loan system and kind of the disastrous impact that's having for them, especially kind of students with families. I don't want to dwell on this question too much, actually, but I did a lot around Holocaust Memorial Day and tackling racism and fascism within our movement, within society, because it's so, so important, and we can't be staying silent anymore on anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, racism and fascism at all, and I'm really proud to have pioneered the project on our living memory, because education is the way that we're going to solve this, and we need to do it collectively, and we are the future, and we are going to make sure that our society is fit for everyone, where everyone can thrive on their university and college campuses. I'm going to just go on to the next questions, but if you have any more questions on my record, then I'm happy to answer or tweet to you. So it was, have I done enough on sexual harassment? Conference, we can never do enough to tackle sexual harassment. We will never be doing enough on sexual harassment until all the sexual harassers are kicked off campuses and lag culture has been changed, and we have a safe space for all students on our campus, not just women, but trans students and men. Every single student has the right to walk around their campus free from fear and harassment. I've been there for survivors, I've been there for students' unions who've wanted to talk, for sabbatical officers that have had issues in their unions, and for students as well. We've heard apprentices about sexual harassment in the workplace, and we've taken on what they've said about it, and I know they've been working with other officers, which is really exciting, and having their voice heard, which too often isn't in our movement. And we've been tackling loud culture within our Alcohol Impact project, so this year's the largest ever Alcohol Impact, and with our first ever conference, and seeing how we can kind of put in consent workshops through our Alcohol Impact project, and creating healthier and safer and more inclusive campus environments in relation to alcohol. And liberation campaigns. So at the start of my year, I sent out an email to all the liberation officers, because liberation is intrinsically linked to welfare, and we have to be working together. And I'm proud to have worked with them and by their side, and always being there to offer support and being at the end of the phone for our liberation officers, not just in the UK, but also in the nations. So I guess I'll just, like I mentioned about specifically with Jess, the trans officer, so we've done the stuff around housing again, which is really exciting, the drug stuff as well. We've done around international guarantor schemes. We also made sure that it's now for estranged students, so we had her really valuable impact on that. I've been working with the Women's Campaign. We've looked into the provisions of providing moon cups through our purchasing consortium, to kind of widening the variety of sanitary products that we offer and making them more sustainable as well, and how we can promote that. We've been planning a Women in Interfaith event, which hopefully will happen this year, but we've definitely got the ball rolling. And we're looking at different organisations we can also kind of work in how to do Women in Interfaith work together, which is really exciting. I fully kind of support and will be there for the recommendations that came out of the Muslim student survey and the harrowing results that we saw, because as a Jewish student, when we had our Jewish student survey last year, I know the impact that had on students, and I stand fully with all Muslim students to fully tackle Islamophobia on campuses, because I know the impact that it had for my community, and I fully stand with all Muslim students on that. So I look forward to working with that, and I'm really glad that that piece of work had been done. With the Disabled Students Campaign, we've been working a lot on mental health stuff, response to UK consultations, been working with Emily, the VPFE as well, around specialist colleges engagement in NUS, because we know that we're not the most accessible movement for specialist colleges, and we need to be doing a lot more and hearing their voices a lot more and listening to what they say when they tell us. So I'm really proud to have kind of been working with them, and it's definitely been one of my highlights this year. With the Black Students Campaign, we've been kind of had a meeting about Prevent and see where that lies, and I will always again stand against the racist and hostile and Islamophobic Prevent agenda, and support the Students Not Suspect campaign, and the Women's Officer and the Black Students Officer who decided collectively to lead that campaign. We've been working with, we're trying to work with the LGBT campaign, the LGBT plus campaign, sorry, on LGBT plus students of faith, but I've also been working with Student Minds on LGBT plus mental health and their survey as well. I think that's...
And the next question is, Which student rent strike campaigns have you worked with this year? And second, what work have you done for housing? And third, in a year where trans students have faced a huge increase in abuse online and in the right-wing press, what have you done to support trans students and especially trans women in the face of this?
Sure, thank you. So I'll again take those in that order. So the first question was on rent strikes. We've seen a number of rent strikes happen in the UK, in London predominantly, which have been really successful, and that's really great. We have, and they've worked for those students. We've got a briefing that was created last year in the welfare zone, and we've been sharing that out to all kind of students that have come into contact with me and asked for it. We've been sending our legal team and the solicitors that we use to help students understand their legal rights around rent strikes as well, to any student that's been in contact with us about it. I do want to reiterate that rent strikes work for some institutions and they don't work for all institutions, and we need to be really using a diversity of tactics when we're talking about setting the rent prices, because rent strikes do work. They worked at UCL and they worked on other campuses, and that's really, really good, but they don't work at small and specialist institutions all the time. They don't work in the valleys, they don't work in rural places, and we need to be really thinking of a variety of tactics and how to do it. Because if you're a student and you're maybe an adult learner and you're living in social housing and you don't pay your rent, you're going to be evicted, and I do not want to put any student in that situation or be forcing them to be doing that and to be evicted from their house and be homeless and have nowhere to live. So I've supported the rent strikes where I've been asked to, and of course I will do that for institutions that feel that that's the right way to go about it on their campus. Like I said, I don't think it is the right way for all colleges and universities, and we need to make sure that also, like, if you're in halls, your university kind of has a responsibility to you. If you're in the private rental sector, again, you will just get kicked out and you will be homeless. And so we need to always make sure that students understand their rights and understand what the implications are when they are going on, when they decide to go on rent strike, and we support them if they do decide to do that as a tactic. What have I done on housing? I think was the next question. So again, the London plan was really, really successful for students, and I'm really excited that that will affect thousands of students, like I said. And we did the stuff around trans-inclusive accommodation. I'm on time, sorry. After the horrific tragedy that happened in Grenfell Tower, we produced straight away, actually one of the first things I did when I came into office. We know that students are living in high-rise accommodation, so we created a fire safety guide for students and students' unions to know kind of what the legal obligations that their universities and their private rented halls have to abide by, and we lobbied all the codes as well. And I'm happily to take questions on Twitter. Thank you so much, conference.
Thank you. Okay, conference, now we need to approve that report. So, do I see delegates in favour? And anyone against? And any abstentions? That report clearly passes. Okay, conference, we now move on to the welfare zone. Motion W101, mental health from the roots up. Do I see a member of the welfare zone committee? I see that delegate there. You will have 2 minutes for your proposal. Please state your name and constituent member for the record. Thank you.
Hi, conference, me again. Izzy, NEC. Conference, I'm proud of the works of students' unions and the welfare zone, tackling the stigma of mental health in our society and taking tangible actions to support students' unions. We are winning. We've made mental health a government priority for the first time. We've sent freedom of information requests to hundreds of institutions that just aren't doing enough. Initiated mental health first aid training for every students' union. We should be proud. At long last, we are talking about this issue that affects millions of students. It's not enough, though. We've seen a 5-fold increase in students disclosing mental health conditions, a 94% increase in demand for services, a lack of culturally competent support, and now, with the issue at the forefront of the agenda for the first time. There will be those who say tackling the stigma is soft, that it's fluffy welfarism, and that it's easy to talk, but we can't walk the walk. I've never hidden the fact that I'm a proud Jewish woman, but the obstacles in my religious community to a proper conversation about mental health are still present and they are still considerable. In marginalised communities across this country, working class, BME, the stigma of talking about your mental health is still all too real. It's part of you. It's something you have to live with every single day. But we know that talk isn't enough for those whose problems aren't just intersectional, but are often intertransient. So we've been taking action, and with your support, we can continue to do so. Support for students' unions to increase their funding for mental health provision. A students' union roadshow delivering training and support on your doorstep, tackling not just the symptoms but the causes of mental health, like marketisation, debt, poverty, poor housing, bullying and hate crime. In Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland, in FE, HE and apprenticeships, let's create a mental health strategy in every college and university across the country. Sector bodies that don't just talk a good game, but deliver as well. Conference, let's help students and support student unions and deliver for students. I urge you to vote for this motion. Thank you very much.
Okay, conference, we're now going to move to Amendment 101A. And the speech 4 is from Gloucester Students' Union. Do I see a delegate? I see that delegate there. While we're waiting for that delegate, just a shout out to all the hacks that's watching at home, especially my boyfriend. Get back to work and stop watching me here. But I do love you. Thanks. Anyone wants to wave at me, see, you can do that now, but get back to work. You will have a minute and a half. Oh, he's texting me now. You will have a minute and a half. You will have a minute and a half to state your case, and please state your name and constituent member for our records. Thank you.
Emily Andrews, University of Gloucestershire, just for the record. We are a place, believe it or not. Conference, I don't disagree with this motion in any way, and I do not want to undermine it, so chill your beans. But as well as NUS creating a fantastic campaign, we want Vice-Chancellors, the Office for Students and UUK to recognise the severity of this problem as well. The levels of low mental health, mental distress and low well-being in the UK in the students is increasing. It's tragic. I know mental health is a priority, and you know mental health is a priority, so is there something that our executives are missing? Why are they not making mental health a priority? If 1 in 4 students experience mental health problems, why are Vice-Chancellors and principals so behind in creating any strategies with tangible and effective outcomes? Are they living under a rock? It is time for the Office for Students to demand effective policies on our students and mental health and well-being and make sure they're included in baseline requirements for education providers. Mental health questions should be included in the NSS and results in the Teaching Excellence Framework. We have done enough time talking. It is time to tell our institutions to sort it out. Please vote for this amendment because we know it matters and it needs to matter more. Okay, thank you.
Okay, conference, we have parts. I'm just going to hand over to DPC.
Hello, conference. So we have the first part of the day to remove conference resolves 4 to argue that mental health questions should be included in the National Student Survey and the results included in the Teaching Excellence and Outcomes Framework. So this is parts to remove that resolution from the amendment.
Okay, conference, do I see 100 delegates wishing to see the case for these parts to be removed? Okay, so if you want it, put your hand right up. Sorry, because there was some just flitting up and down, so I'd like to see. Okay, and all those against? And any abstentions? I clearly see 100. Oh, right, sorry, no, it's 4 against. Okay, I saw 100. To the proposer of those parts, please come to the stage. Thank you. Sorry about that, conference. Please state your name and constituent member for our records. Thank you.
Mark Crawford, UCL. So yeah, it's an important topic, mental health. We've come a long way since a few years ago when we used to fawn over puppy rooms. Great to see that we're looking at tangible solutions dealing with the mental health crisis on our campuses. But I really must say I don't think that lobbying the Office for Students and getting the TEF on board is going to help. So this is not one of those tangible solutions. The TEF is there to further marketisation of our universities, and it's that marketisation which has, amongst other things, meant soaring rents. It's meant cut student support services, including counselling. It's meant students forced to work part-time jobs. The TEF is not going to stop the mental health crisis. It exists in a way that will only exacerbate it. We have to smash up the TEF, and we have to fight for mental health funding. That's what we do. And when you fight for mental health funding, you can win. Like we did at UCL a few weeks ago, grassroots campaign, we won £140,000 for increased counselling support on campuses. That has to be exported to every campus in this country. And it also means fighting marketisation in every form. It does not mean lobbying for the people wrecking our universities and wrecking our mental health to be nicer to us.
Thank you, Delegate. Do I see a speech against these parts being removed? I see that delegate there. While we wait for that delegate, we've got some fun facts about the Spice Girls conference. The Wannabe video, they asked one of the leaders of the Labour Party to appear in their Wannabe video, but he sadly declined. And in 2001, Jerry Halliwell appeared in the 2001 manifesto online for the Labour Party. Two of my favourite things. You will have 1 minute and a half for your case. Please state your name and constituent member for our records. Please stay tuned, conference, for a poll I'm about to put on the hashtag. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Kamal Mohammed, and I'm from Kingston University. So, I agree with the last speaker that TEF is a problem, and we need to really fight TEF at every level. But I don't think you've looked at the section that you want to remove. It says that we need to include it in the National Student Survey. And one thing I know from experience is that the NSS scores is something that the university cares about. Now, I understand we want to remove TEF, but to remove that section would be, let's just say, it'll be damaging to mental health problems. What you want to do is for the university to care and put more funding into it, and the only way they'll care is if they're being punished financially through the NSS scores. So I'm arguing for these parts not to be removed. If you want to make a case to remove just the TEF part, I'll agree with you. Until then, I'm supporting the amendment as it stands. Thank you.
Okay, conference. So just to clarify with parts, if these parts are removed from a main motion, they disappear. Sorry, conference. Bear with me 1 second before I get started. Sorry, conference. If parts are removed from an amendment, they disappear forever, and if they are kept, they move into the main motion. Does everybody get that? Can I just see your cards? If you get it, put your delegate card in the air. Okay, fine. So we'll move to the vote. So all those in favour? Okay, we've had a request for a second round of speeches, which I am going to grant. So is there anyone, this is free, anyone wishing to speak to remove these parts? I can see people pointing. I'm so sorry. I see that delegate there. You will have a minute and a half to state your case. Please state your name and constituent member for our records. Thank you, delegate.
David Hitchmo, Liverpool Students' Union. The Teaching Excellence Framework is a deliberate effort by the Conservative government to deny us proper representation as students. The only way for us to get what we need and what we want as students is direct representation. I understand what the last speaker was saying about the National Student Survey and how it can be very important in getting universities to take action and notice of what we are saying as students. But the TEF is something that we just simply have to take a strong stand against. If we don't, then we're just going to continue to see the Conservative government diminish our representation, and it will only serve to benefit them and introduce more and more steps for us to get anything done. That is why I am saying that we do need to remove this part. Thank you.
That's time, delegate. Thank you. Okay, do I see someone wishing to keep those parts? I see that delegate there, you in the blue t-shirt. Okay, conference, I'm going to put on the hashtag now, round 1 of what is the best Spice Girls song. It's on the hashtag NUS hashtag. You'll have 20 minutes to vote, and then we'll go to round 2, 3, 4, you get it, until we get a winner. So, round 1, off you go, conference. You will have a minute and a half. Please state your name and constituent member for our records. Thank you.
Good morning, conference. I'm Jamie Gidding from Hills Road Sixth Form College. I'm first-time speaker, first-time delegate, and first-ever delegate from my Sixth Form College. So I'm standing here as a member of an FE institution, but also as just coming through the prospective student process. A lot of the information that is collected through things like the NSS, not so much with the TEF, it's not particularly reliable, I think we can all agree on that, but especially the NSS and other forms of surveys are pretty important in picking. And if people can see that a university is not good for mental health, they're less likely to go there if they have existing issues. I'm not saying that the NSS or the TEF are in any way good ways of modelling universities, and sort of marketisation as a whole is a dreadful idea, but this is not what this motion is, or the parts. We have policy on the NSS and the TEF to get rid of them. That is not this. This is on mental health, and this is important. We need to keep these parts.
Okay, conference, we're going to move to a vote. I have been asked for another round, but because there are elections in a few minutes, I don't want to get caught up in this, so I think we're going to move straight to the vote. So, all those in favour of removing those parts, please put your delegate cards in the air. And all those against? And any abstentions? Okay, those parts are clearly kept. Okay, so now we move on to voting on the motion as a whole. No? Bear with me, conference. So now we need a speech against the amendment. Do I see anyone wishing to speak against the amendment? I do not. So we'll move straight to the vote. All those in favour? And all those against? And any abstentions? That amendment clearly passes. Okay, conference, we now move to 101B, and that is property of Kingston Students' Union. Do I see a delegate from Kingston? I see that delegate there. You will have a minute and a half to state your case. Please state your name and constituent member for our records. Thank you.
Daisy Boyd-Dutoit, Union of Kingston Students, Welfare Zone Committee. Conference, mental health is a political issue. For too long, NUS and students' unions have focused their time and resources on puppy rooms, craft-making sessions, and awareness campaigns. I, as a welfare officer, have been duped into thinking that these actions alone will fully support students. But conference, the reality is that this does little to address the root causes of mental health and does little to help those desperately in need of properly resourced mental health services. Because conference, our battle against mental health is a battle against marketisation. High rents, exploitative working conditions, job cuts, pension rates, TEF, are all causes of ill mental health and disproportionately affect those from liberation backgrounds. That is why it is so crucial that our approach to mental health campaigning is political. For example, at UCL, SU, I've watched in awe as students took direct action and secured huge increases in funding for mental health services. This is what we can achieve when we have political mental health campaigns that recognize that marketisation is a mental health issue and organize against it. Conference, vote for this amendment for mental health campaigns focus not just on awareness, but on effective action.
Thank you, Delegate. Do I see anyone wishing to speak against this amendment? I see that delegate there. You will have a minute to state, minute? Please state your name and constituent member for our records. Thank you.
Hello,
Hello, there we go. Hi, my name is Peter Gillibrand from the University of Exeter Students Guild. I'm also a first-time speaker, and there is quite a lot of you now that I'm up here. So, hey guys. I really understand where this amendment's coming from. As a student volunteer, I did a lot of RAG at my time in uni. We did a thing where we brought donkeys onto campus during Mental Health Awareness Month. I understand this amendment, as I've said, but I don't think it is needed within the main body of the motion. I think everything should go towards the major campaign that everyone's pushing for mental health awareness, even if it's from these small events to the major strategy to help get people engaged with student mental health. I think things like this get the people who aren't necessarily that engaged with students' unions to get engaged with this huge push on mental health that we as students want. Conference, I really think that things like this get people engaged. I've had people come up to me after running my event, I'm using my personal experience here, that really want to get involved, that really want to sort of help in the major campaign. They start thinking more about their mental health, about what's going through their head as they go through all-nighters in the library. So therefore, I really understand where the motion is coming from, but I will have to vote against, and I really hope you understand where I'm coming from. Thank you very much, Conference.
Thank you, Delegate. Okay, we've had a request for an extra round of speeches, which I am going to grant. So can I see someone who wants to speak in favour? Yeah, I know, I can see you, Rachel, but I'm trying to get a wide range. I haven't heard from that person in the yellow T-shirt at the back. So if you'd like to come up and state your case. You, looking round, you put your card up, right? Okay, yeah, you at the back in the green tee, yeah. Please state your name and constituent member for our records. And Conference, I can see people, but I want to get a wide variety of people, and I want to make sure that everyone can participate in our democracy. So even if you're waving at me, that's perfectly fine. I know people are passionate. I'm passionate about lots of things, but I want to make sure there's debate, I want to make sure it's equal, and I want to make sure that everyone has a chance to participate in our democracy. Thank you. You will have a minute and a half to state your case. Please state your name and constituency member for our records. Cheers, Bab.
Hi, Justine Kennedy, UCL. I'm heavily involved in the fundamental health services happening at UCL, and I just want to respond to some of the points that the previous speaker said. So, like, mental health is a healthcare issue. Like, it needs proper healthcare. That means funding for counseling services. Like having SUs, like their only mental health campaign that they run is like bringing donkeys to campus is not gonna like fix what's happening on our campuses with depression, anxiety. We need counseling services. And what that kind of stuff does as well with the puppy petting stuff, with the like, I guess donkey thing, with stuff around like nail, like putting like, I don't know, like all the kind of like pseudo-welfare stuff, is it lets our universities off the hook for not properly funding our mental health services and for being complicit in this marketization that's like causing this mental health crisis on our campus. Like, we need to have proper funding for these services, and we're not saying that awareness is not important, we're not saying that like it's not part of the struggle, but the struggle right here, right now happening on our campuses is around having enough counselors, having enough support, and making sure people can actually like access healthcare, because that's what mental health is. It's a healthcare issue. Please vote for this amendment.
Thank you very much, Delegate. Can I remind delegates as well on access, please don't clap or whoop. Like I said earlier, we want to make sure that this conference is accessible to everybody, so please don't clap or whoop. Okay, we're now going to move to a speech against. I see that delegate there in the orange. Turn my mic on and then speak, that will help. You will have a minute and a half to state your name and constituent member for the records. Good voting, guys. The poll is going to be open for 5 more minutes, but there have been 217 votes so far, and a rival poll from NUS UK. But do vote on mine, and then we'll go to round 2 in just a second. Thank you very much, Conference.
Hi, Conference. Ellie Keeler, University of Birmingham Guild of Students. I'm only really going to repeat what the delegate before me said for the speech against, that this is not all we're going to do. I'm sat with first-time delegates from my union who aren't SABs, and they're sat there going, why are we debating this? Why can't we do both of these things? And why can't we do these things? Why can't we do the engagement stuff that starts with the well-being? That's where students come to us from, and that's where they can go and get more support. Sorry, I'm a bit nervous. Then we can do the welfare stuff, the campaigning with our institutions, with the government. We can do all of this. I'm glad we're not still debating the TEF, because this is what we need to focus. We need to get the engagement with our students and with our delegates, and then we need to do the higher campaigning. So yes, please vote against this amendment.
Okay, conference, we're just going to hand over to DPC.
Hello, conference. Okay, there has been a point of order. So, in accordance with Rule 380C, that no second round of speeches be allowed for the remainder of this zone. So, if we could just have someone to speak for that. Oh, so yeah, if we just request a ruling from the chair on this point of order, please.
I'm not going to request that, conference. If you want to debate, we'll have a debate. If you don't want to debate, you won't have a debate. We're here to debate motions from student unions and from students and activists on the ground. I take it when you start saying that you want votes and you want to take part in our democracy, I'm going to allow you to do that. So I'm going to not have that at all. And if you come and request the next round, we've got time, I'm going to grant it. Thank you. Okay, we're now going to move to a summation on this amendment, and that's property of UCL. Do I see a delegate from UCL? I see that delegate there.
Mark Crawford, UCL, back again. I think it just shows sort of like that a lot of sabbatical officers live in this ivory tower where they think that handing out free smoothies is like, you know, the masses are craving it, you know, they really want it. This is how we say stop the mental health crisis, and like, this is how we engage students. Like, the reason the mental health campaign started at UCL in the way that it did, by demanding funding, was because people were ridiculing these things. Like, you had to wait 3 months to get an appointment with our counselling service, and we had the union handing out like smoothies and like fruit and veg and saying, see, we're supporting you. Like, no, like, not only should we not let universities off the hook, we shouldn't let sabbatical officers off the hook when they say they're going to do stuff around mental health and then waste their time doing this rather than holding universities to account, because it's easier to do the first one. I'm going to say that again. If they demand funding, that's the most important thing right now. That's where the fight is in our campuses. That's where it has to be. Why don't we do both? Well, sure, let's do both. In fact, actually, no, I'll take that back. Let's not do the first one. Let's not do the nice things, because basically, two things. Firstly, SUs exist. Sorry, can you slide? Thank you. SUs exist to unionize people. Students' unions, that's where the word is. That's what it means. And universities, well, who should be providing these things? Who are the people who know how to support mental health? Well, it's the counsellors, it's our psychological services, it's our mental health services. They're the ones who should be running those things. They really believe they're good for our mental health, but they're underfunded. So let's fight for funding, and then they can make those decisions about the best ways to support students and their mental health. Okay? Fight for funding, stop wasting your time with puppy rooms, and vote for this amendment.
Conference, we're going to hand over to DPC.
Hello, conference. There has been a procedural motion submitted for the chair's ruling to be overturned on the previous point of order, that no second round of speeches be allowed for the remainder of the zone.
Okay, we need to see 100 delegates who wish to see the case for that. Do I see 100 delegates? Yes, I do. Beth Douglas, NEC.
Hello.
Is this? Yep, this is on. Hello. Beth Douglas, NEC. Robbie, I love you, Bab, but like we've spent 20 minutes on one motion so far, and there's some really, really important ones later on that we need to get to. Decriminalisation of abortion in Northern Ireland. We must discuss that, conference. Decriminalisation of sex work. Come on, conference. We have to discuss that. Supporting student carers. I love debate. I love it. Let's debate as much as possible, but let's try also to get through as many motions as possible, and let's do this, and let's have lots of comprehensive policy. We've already said in the past that we could change our mind later on, but we don't necessarily want latter policy going to NEC. So let's try and get through all of this as much as possible and debate and pass the policy and do what we're here to do. Thank you, conference.
Hello, conference. Beth, I love you too, Bab, but what I love most is democracy. I love conference, and I love debate. I love the fact that you can come up here and talk about things that are really important. We're talking about significant things too, like mental health services. And yes, we can get to those other motions because you can extend the guillotine, you can do all the things that you need to do so that you can participate in this democratic event. Conference, you have been elected to, you have your priorities, you have all the things that you need to do. I want debate. I'm in the chair. I want to be fair. I want to make sure everyone can have their go. I want to stay. I want to make sure that we remain a political union that debates, and that's why I said an extra round of speeches. If it means anything, I won't allow thirds, but if somebody wants to get up and make a point from their students' union, let's just let them. Extend the welfare guillotine, keep me in the chair, and keep the Spice Girl facts coming. Thank you, conference.
Could you just bear with me for a moment, please? We're having a conversation behind the arras. Okay, DPC, please.
Good morning, conference. There has been another procedural motion submitted for the vote to be by secret ballot on this procedural motion. So calm down, let's go through the process and let's hear it out. And if I can just pass it over to John.
Okay, we need... Can we see 100 people who want to hear the case for that? I don't see 100, thank you. If we can move on now, and we go straight to the vote. All those in favour of overturning the chairperson's ruling, please show. All those against? That clearly falls. The vote was against. Oh, and abstentions, please. Okay. Back to normal now.
Okay, thank you, conference. After that, I just need to get my head back in a space. So let me just quickly ask where we're at, and then I'll come back to you. Is that okay? Thank you. Okay, so we're now going to move to a vote on 101B. So can I see all those delegates in favour of Amendment 101B? Please put your delegate cards really high in the air. Okay, if they're up, and they're down, like the Grand Old Duke. Is that the one? And all those against? And any abstentions? Okay, I want to see that again. So, all those in favour of motion 101B? And all those against? Any abstentions? One more time. All those in favour, really high in the air, please.
DPC will stand up and have another view on it.
Can I have DPC just have another view, please, as well? And all those against? Yeah. And any abstentions? Falls. Yeah, that amendment falls. We're now going over to an elections announcement. Please welcome to the stage, Jules the Rules. Remember, no whooping, conference, BSL, hand signs only. Thank you.
Love you too. Sorry, just let me find it. So as I said, I have an announcement, but firstly, a reminder, please check which ballot paper you are filling for the relevant election. You laugh, but we did have a couple of non-president ballot papers in the last election, so those votes weren't counted and those delegates won't get to cast their votes in the other elections. So please do check you're filling out the correct ballot paper for the correct election. That public service announcement is done. Now to announcing the result of your national president election. So, there were, after counting, there was a quota of 345 because there was one spoilt ballot. Received 691 votes, but 690 were valid because one was spoilt. This meant that the quota for election was 345. So at the end of the first round, James received 104 votes, Martin received 352 votes, Saqib received 168 votes, and reopened nominations received 66. I'm therefore happy to declare that Shakira Martin is re-elected as your national president. And please, conference, quiet. I have not finished. I would also like to congratulate all the candidates in the election because it's never easy getting up here on stage saying why they should vote for you. That's it. Jules out.
Thank you very much, Jules. And can I just remind you again, conference, no whooping. I know people get really excited. I'm one of those people. But please, deep breaths during election announcements and try not to clap, please. So we're now going to move to Amendment 101C, supporting officers dealing with student suicide. Can I see, this is property of Durham. Do I see that delegate there? And just bear with me 2 seconds while I speak to the proposer. You will have 2 minutes. Please state your name and constituent member for our records. Thank you.
Good afternoon, conference. I'm Megan Kroll from Durham Students' Union. So this is something that I've spoken to quite a few students' unions officers about this year. Actually, so many that it is really very concerning. And this is obviously a sensitive subject, and for obvious reasons, I'm not going to go into great detail. But as recently as 12 days ago, we've been dealing with a case of student suicide. And very sadly, this loss is just one of a deeply worrying number since I began my university career at Durham. Our student leaders have been supporting those close to the student, but it's difficult for them, really difficult. It takes a lot of emotional labour. It's also so difficult to know what to do, what to say, and how best to support those students, especially when institutions like to sweep these occurrences under the rug. This amendment was submitted after numerous conversations with SUs about this issue. But for the past 2 years as a SAB, I've seen firsthand, more times than I wish I had to, or ever thought that I would, I've seen firsthand why what we're asking for is so, so vital. So vote for this amendment to support officers who are in this position, and please vote for this motion for an annual campaign, one that won't just raise awareness around student suicide, but will aim to tackle it. Thank you.
Thank you, Delegate. Do I see a delegate wishing to speak against this amendment? I see that delegate there. Okay, conference, I'm now typing out poll number 2, and I will reveal my own election announcement of who won poll 1 in just a second. When you get to the stage, you'll have 1.5 minutes to state your argument, and please state your name and constituent member for our records. Thank you.
Hello, conference. Musa Nela, president of Southern City and Burnville College at Birmingham. The reason why I wanted to go against this amendment, because one of the main reasons that is sending young people and all students to the suicidal ideation is cyberbullying and social media. And at this amendment, it wasn't mentioned at all. What I think that NUS should do is to tackle social media and to tackle the fact that are sending the young people to this suicidal ideation. If we don't do this, these numbers are going to increase and it's going to go to a number that we cannot deal more with these students. So vote against this amendment until they do it more properly and until they find real solution about this. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Delegate. Just show it to the minutes desk, just there. Oh no, sorry, it's at the front, sorry. Okay, so we're now going to move to a summation of this debate, and that is the summation is property of FXU. Do I see a delegate from FXU? Ah, I do, Bab. I see you there. Please come and state your name and constituent member for the record. Poll number 2 is now online, and Wannabe won round 1. I agree with you, conference. Now see round 2. You've got about 10 minutes, 20 minutes to vote. 20 minutes, I'll give you 20 minutes. Thank you, Bab.
Harry Bishop, FXU. Conference, I can't believe that there was a speech against this. Giving SUs resources to support students, it is a no-brainer. In October, my student union dealt with a student's suicide. It's been incredibly difficult for all of us. As one of the presidents at FXU, I supported the friends of that student. I worked with the university on a support strategy for them. And I did all I could to ensure that those students impacted by the sudden death of a friend had everything they needed to cope. This is incredibly difficult for any of us. And I felt like I had no clue what I was doing throughout the entire process, because there's no standard for this, for what officers are meant to do, how we can support our students, and what help and other options there are for them. This motion is asking for help. This motion is only asking for help so that we can help our students. Surely that's what NUS's welfare zone should be doing. Conference, please vote for this amendment.
Thank you very much, Delegate. We are now going to pass to DPC. No, we're not. We're going to vote on this motion, on this amendment. So, all those in favour of this amendment, please put your delegate cards in the air. And all those against? And any abstentions? Conference, that motion clearly passes. We're now going to pass to DPC.
We have received a guillotine challenge to extend the zone by 30 minutes. So I'd just like to pass that back.
So I need to see 100 delegates who wish to see the case for this. I clearly do. Can the proposer of this, what's the word? Procedural motion, please come to the front. I had a right mind blank then, sorry. You will have a minute? A minute? A minute to state your case, and please state your name and constituent member for the record.
Stephen McChrystal, NEC and Queen's Students' Union. Conference, I know we have a lot of motions to get through. I know that every zone is incredibly important, but we spent 30 minutes debating puppy rooms, which I know is a very important issue, but we have a motion today on the motion on decriminalisation of abortion in Northern Ireland. Our laws, the 1967 Abortion Act was not extended to Northern Ireland. Pregnant people are travelling on a daily basis to Great Britain just for healthcare, and if you do that, or if you even assist by giving advice or helping out to procure pills or whatever, you can go to jail for that. People are being prosecuted, people are at risk of going to jail, and we need to get on to this motion, so please vote to extend the guillotine. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Delegate. The property of the speech against is the property of DPC, so the chair of DPC, Sam, will come up and state his case. please state your name. I know you know what you're doing, but I feel like I need to say it. Please state your name and constituent member for our records. Thank you.
Thanks, Bab. Right, Sam Majunga, DPC. Conference. I stood on the stage at the start of conference and explained to you how the timings for conference work and how the pie works. We're in the middle of day 2. We were running behind. I have done a bit of jiggery around in terms of some of the things that are coming forward. However, if we extend the zone by half an hour, we are in real danger of not being able to get through some of the other important aspects of conference. We have just over 24 hours left of conference. We've still got a lot of conference left, including all the election times, which cannot change. Please vote down this motion. I'm not speaking on whatever the content of the zones are. This is a general speech in terms of we just do not have enough time to keep extending the guillotine. Thank you, conference.
Okay, conference, we're going to move straight to a vote. So all those in favour of extending the guillotine of the welfare zone, please put your delegate cards in the air. All those against? Any abstentions? I'm going to say it one more time. All those in favour, please put your delegate cards in the air. Can I ask DPC to help, please? All those against? And any abstentions?
It's your decision.
Okay, sorry, conference. You're going to hate me. One more time. All those in favour, please put your card really high in the air, because I've got bright lights, and I've always wanted this, but this is my moment. Right, okay. All those against? Any abstentions? That passes. So we're now going to move on to Amendment 101D, submitted by Durham Students' Union. Do I see a delegate from Durham? I see that delegate there. You will have 2 minutes to state your argument, and please state your name and constituent member for our records. And please do keep voting in the second Spice Girl poll. We've only got 187 votes. I'm going to say chorusy on this is 230. Get retweeting, get voting. Spice up your life, conference. When you're ready, Bab.
Good morning, conference. Helen Patton from Durham Students' Union. So it is not by accident that mental health is the primary topic of this year's welfare zone. After years of campaigning to eliminate the stigma that subject and put it on the forefront of welfare teams across the country, we have arrived at the point where actual action is needed on a national level. The past year, I've heard a lot the phrase, mental health is as important as physical health. However, let me ask you one question. Do we have the same resources for mental health than we do for illness? Do we have enough support for students suffering from depression or anxiety while they're studying? If I wanted to book a counselling service appointment, it would take me at least 2 weeks to get one, and it's just so bureaucratic. We need an end to this. It's so oversubscribed. What if I really needed the help? A student feels like help is complicated. Campaigns for mental awareness have significantly changed the conversation in the past years, but it is the responsibility of the NHS to treat mental health cases in university cities, and they can't handle the demand. That's a national issue, not us. As has been pointed out by those who have spoken before me, the prevalence of mental health issues at university is at crisis. Conference, I urge you to vote for this amendment, to stop debating and start doing. Thank you very much.
That's time. Thank you, Delegate. Do I see anyone wishing to speak against this amendment? I don't. Okay, so we're going to move straight to the vote. So all those in favour? All those against? And any abstentions? That time, that was very clear. That motion passes. Okay, conference. We have an election. Ooh. So, I will be back after the elections of some vice presidents. Thank you for having me.
Right, conference, we're now moving into the VPHE election, so can everybody take a seat, please? And can I have the candidates up onto the stage, please?
So do I just press the button that says 5 minutes?
Can you ask them to put the slide up, please?
Hiya, can we get the slide up?
Right, can I ask delegates, please, to be aware of what ballot paper they're marking, because in the last national president election, we had one ballot paper for FE and one ballot paper for HE, so they are now void. If you put the wrong ballot papers in, they will become void for any future election. Okay?
Hello? Up in the crow's nest, anyone?
Can we have the screen with the election names on, please? Just asked. There we go. Right, so the first candidate to speak will be Amate Doku. You have 5 minutes when you are ready, Amate. And can we remember not to whoop, please? Thank you. Can we have silence, please?
On the 9th of February, 1897, a brutal attack by the British Army on one of the most advanced city-states in Africa began. Benin City was the capital of the Benin Empire, situated in modern-day Nigeria. With its culture, technology, and independence, it could be truly described as the Wakanda of its day. It was one of the first cities in the world to have street lighting, and its walls were 4 times longer than the Great Wall of China. But the city is perhaps best known for its sacred art. All throughout the city were elaborate and beautiful bronze iron sculptures, known today as the Benin Bronzes. But in 1897, this kingdom was to come to an abrupt end. The entire city was burnt to the ground by the British, and over 5,000 pieces of sacred art and sculptures were stolen and brought to Europe. But the story doesn't end there, because over 100 years later, one of these pieces, a beautiful bronze rooster, ended up on display at my university. I would pass it every single day and had no idea about its history or significance or how important it was to my own heritage. It was only after representing students at a local level that I had the confidence to start to question, dig deeper, and eventually start a campaign for that artifact to be returned home. And that experience for me was a real turning point, because as a proud Ghanaian and African, this artifact was a part of my history, but never a part of my history lessons. And I began to see what happens when students are shut out of shaping the curriculum, what happens when black academics aren't given the opportunity to lead our universities, and what happens when student activists and officers are shut out of key decision-making processes at our institutions. And I made a decision at that moment to do everything I could to make sure that all students, no matter their background, are co-owners of their education. And it is that, keeping the student voice at the heart of the higher education sector, which has shaped every piece of my work as VPHE over the last 8 months, and I'm happy to stand on my strong record. Take the black attainment gap. It was my priority, and now it's a priority for ministers, government, and the sector. Take the UK Quality Code. We've gone from a draft with no student engagement to one which says that institutions must engage students individually and collectively. Take supporting officers on the ground. Now, every single day, hundreds of officers have access to an HE briefing so that they're one step ahead of their institution. And conference, take the dozens of sector committees where I represent you day in, day out, from the QAA board to the OIA board to the UK Standing Committee for Quality Assurance, TISOSAC, QASAC, Skiri, Papap, and a poo-poo, turu, pum. But conference, for next year, we need to step up our game because the challenges ahead are even greater. We need to win the argument that higher education is a public good, win the battle to tackle all forms of overt and covert racism, win the fight back against the dangerous attack on our no-platforming policies, safe spaces, and our freedom of speech. Conference, the only snowflakes are the ones in the right-wing media who are afraid of the avalanche that is the student movement. But there is one issue which I want to highlight above all, which will shape the futures of everyone in this room. An issue that threatens the very fabric of higher education and the UK as a whole. Last year, Theresa May said that Brexit means Brexit. But when I speak to students up and down the UK, they tell me that Brexit means research opportunities lost, the Erasmus scheme at risk, the future of international students and staff unclear, disadvantaged students from the most desperate areas worse off, hate crime and far-right groups on the rise. There is too much at stake for us to stand back and do nothing. And conference. From the makers of 350 million from the NHS comes a new, bold-faced lie, the left-wing argument for Brexit. Conference, it does not exist. And whilst Anna and I are here today presenting two very different visions of HE, I believe what unites us both is that when we have the conviction that direct action and mobilization is necessary on an issue, then nothing will get in our way. I have always said that to win for students' unions, you need the right tactic at the right time, which is why, conference, I am announcing on this stage today that if re-elected, I will support a national student-led UK-wide demonstration to call for a people's vote on the Brexit deal. I ask all of you, student leaders and my fellow NUS officers from across the nations, to look to the future. And if asked where were you in the fight of our generation, we can proudly say that we were at the forefront fighting for our future. Because no matter which way you voted, we need a say on the final deal. We need to take back control. We need to write our own history. Vote Amate number 1 for Vice President Higher Education.
That candidate was Amate Doku. The next candidate to speak is Anna Oppenheim. Anna, you have 5 minutes when you're ready.
Hello, conference. Anna Oppenheim, NEC. On the 8th of June, millions of students voted for a different kind of society. We robbed Theresa May of her majority, and suddenly free education wasn't just a dream on conference floor. It was echoed to the chambers of parliament. I am a proud member of the Labour Party, but I know as well as you do that we will not win just by waiting for Jeremy Corbyn to come along. We have to fight, and we are already doing it and winning. On campuses across the country, students are taking on their departments to fight unfair hidden costs. There are student groups organizing to win scholarships for refugees devastated by war, and hourly paid lecturers fighting and winning fair pay and an end to casual contracts. And just a few weeks ago, occupations broke out up and down across the country. Thousands of students joined picket lines in support of staff pensions, forcing management up and down the country onto their back foot. And where was NUS? I don't know. Conference, there was once a student movement in this country. A movement that, yes, took a seat at the table, but knew that it needed so much more than that. We fought apartheid when the Tories were calling Mandela a terrorist. We led the fight for abortion rights and LGBT+ liberation. Then we beat the 2012 HE bill, and now we unseated Nick Clegg. Conference, we, that movement, are back. Every single one of these actions, taken in solidarity with our staff, sets a brick in the foundations of the university that we want to build together. So it's about time we reclaimed our national union. As an unpaid activist, I know that campaigning is not always smooth. I want to get NUS out of its ivory tower and onto your campus. I want to be the officer who visits you, not just for a photo opportunity, but to give you all the support you need to campaign. Because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter how many hours you spend in Parliament if we forget where our power lies. Not in one officer, but in the hard work of thousands of students on their campuses, organizing and winning every single day. I will work with you to stop attendance monitoring for Tier 4 visa students, to disrupt universities spying on us through Prevent, to win a lecture capture system that doesn't roll over the academic freedoms of our staff, to freeze and cap fees for international students, win meaningful bursaries, make education accessible to disabled students, scrap hidden course costs, and win reading lists that aren't just collections of old white men. And yes, I will take a seat at the table, prepare all the evidence and argue for our rights, but we will not liberate humanity just by sitting on committees. We will only end the attainment gap if we take control of our curriculums from the library to the lab. We will only end the pay gap and sexual harassment on campus if we organize as women in our institutions demanding our rights. We can do so much better than hope for a seat at the table of the Office for Students, a body whose literal job description is overseeing marketization and implementing Prevent. I want to see it smashed into tiny little pieces. Conference, I also want to talk about something that's close to my heart. Because those of us who are frightened about Brexit have every right to be so. International students like myself and the migrant workers who keep our universities running are under threat. And the US must fight tooth and nail for free movement and the rights of all migrants, students and workers, EU and not EU, our right to education, work, housing and healthcare. And yes, I will make Erasmus Plus a red line in Brexit negotiations. As a job-stealing Polish migrant, I promise there's only one group of people whose wages I want to drive down. That is your vice-chancellors. Conference, what just a year ago was a pipe dream, is now within our reach. Cradle-to-grave education, free and fully funded by taxing the rich in society, with properly paid lecturers, research funding protected, living grants for all, and most importantly, run by us and for us, students and staff working together. Yesterday, the education zone ran out of time. We did not get to discuss important motions on free education, free movement, overpaid vice-chancellors, solidarity with striking workers, fighting the pay gap, and democratizing our universities. So those decisions will be made right here, right now. Vote Anna #1 for VPHE and make them a priority.
That candidate was Anna Hockenheim. So you're now going to complete your ballot paper for the HE election. And what we're going to ask you to do is keep hold of them, because we're going to go straight into the next election, which is the FE election. And after that, we're going to go into the Union Development election, and then we're going to ask you to do what we did earlier, where you'll all leave, and then you'll put all three in the box at once. So just make sure that you are marking the correct ballot papers, okay? So if the candidates would like to leave now, and we'll give you a couple of minutes to mark the papers. I'm now going to hand over to Rodri, who's going to do the FE election.
Hello, conference. Whilst people are filling in their ballots, can I get the candidates for Further Education Vice President up on the stage, please? There's no need to clap. It's only people getting on the stage. Chill out. So can we have Neil Black and Emily Ann Chapman on the stage? Thank you. In the same way there's no need to clap, I've just said the names. I don't need them repeated from conference floor. Many thanks. Okay, conference. I hope we are filled in our HE ballot. Obviously, we're not collecting until the end of this election session, so you still have some time. Meanwhile, we're going to start on the election for Vice President of Further Education. So just a reminder, this is a separate ballot paper to Union Development. If you have an HE ballot paper, you will not have an FE ballot paper, is my understanding. So just make sure you're filling in the right one. I wouldn't want to void any more ballot papers today. Thank you. So, candidates, you will have 5 minutes to speak. We're going to run in the order that is on the PowerPoint. So, Neil Black, would you like to come up for your 5 minutes? You can start when you're ready.
Whoa. Cuts to funding, poor mental health and homelessness. Buzzwords for some, but the everyday reality that students and officers face. We can no longer accept a broken system that has since forgotten its purpose to provide accessible, local provision to train and upskill students. Conference, I chose to stand for VPFE because I know the potential of our unions to engage and empower students. I've seen firsthand the difference the SU can make to the individuals. We don't exist in a vacuum. We know what happens when senior management in our institutions fail to appropriately resource and prioritise our SUs. We simply cannot deliver for students. Once elected, I'll make the priorities I've laid out and with you on the important policies passed at conference. We'll drag the sector to a place that puts students at the heart of their learning, not happily accepting, like some, that FE in its current state is here to stay. Because without change, it won't be. Too many of our fellow students can't be here today. Colleges make up 65% of our NUS membership, and yet this isn't reflected at our events. 20 miles away from here at West Lothian College, officers are wishing they could attend, but they can't because senior managers simply said no. This is appalling. Conference, I didn't read the bit in my constitution that said senior management dictate what is beneficial for students. Will someone show me? Let's talk about the NUS travel bursary. How beneficial is that funding when officers aren't appropriately supported, have a lack of staff and are too busy with meetings and just don't have the time, capacity or knowledge to even apply? No amount of emails will help them access those funds. This wouldn't happen in a properly resourced SU or fly at a university. As long as colleges continue to treat SUs that way, we won't achieve partnership working. I fought to ensure my student association is a critical friend it needs to be. I'll ensure SUs get the right funding and resources to be strong and autonomous. Shockingly, some colleges were offered free apprenticeship places to attend conference, and they turned them down. Apprentices are part of the communities within our colleges, both on campus and in their places of work. They deserve representation in our structures. I've committed to working with the National Society and will support apprentices. We can and will do better by them. We hear it every year about liberation being at the heart of everything we do. It's not about pretty words, Conference. It's about the actions we take. I'm committed to embedding liberation into the core of all my work by ensuring a diverse set of voices are at the table and liberation is no longer a sideline project, who are left to fend for themselves. I will use my privilege in a way I can support and stand by those that face discrimination. Whether that be personal or structural, I am a proud ally of liberation. We lose too many of our students because of inadequate provisions for mental health support in our colleges. It's not acceptable. I've won at my college the introduction of a counselling service. I've taken my students' concerns about mental health and put it at the top of the college's agenda. As VPFE, I'll work with the Welfare Zone to do the same on a national scale. Conference, everyone in this room has a story about struggling to survive. Student poverty is all too common. Extortionate rents, exploitative employers, and a government that relentlessly attacks students. I've campaigned to secure a national review of student support in Scotland. The government has conceded that college and university students deserve the same levels of funding, and no student should be out of pocket while studying. However, I'm not done yet, Conference. I'll take that fight to the heart of the UK government. Everyone in this room has a powerful and transformative journey through education. Conference, we still lose far too many students from our campuses. And more never even make it through our doors because we have a broken sector that doesn't serve the best interests of our most vulnerable students. Right now, we can't give everything we've got to make the lives of students better, whether that's in Southend or Shetland. I want to see a transformative journey for every single student, and the work I've done since the first day I walked in the office can get us there. What we need is stronger student unions that are well-funded, supported, and able to win for students, so we can look our members in the eye and tell them we did everything we could. Vote Neil Black, VPFE.
Time, candidate, time. Thank you. That was Neil Black. Next is Emily Ann Chapman. Emily, you'll have 5 minutes when you start.
Emily Chapman, NEC. Last year, you elected me to lead an active and relevant FE campaign in the most difficult political and economic circumstances. I told you I'd launch a learner voice framework to get our voices heard in college. I told you I'd lead a campaign to tackle the disgraceful costs we face just to get to campus. I told you I'd work with SEND learners around the UK to make our events and works accessible to all. I said I'd be loud, I said we'd be proud, and I said FE was here to stay. Conference, I've done what I've said. I've kept my promises, and get this, conference, I'm just getting started. Conference, people on this stage will talk about their journey, and I don't mean the coach trip to Glasgow. It may sound self-indulgent, but it's their road from where they were before to where they are now. I could tell you about mine. I could tell you about how this adopted Yorkshire lass got to college. I could tell you about building Leeds City College Students' Union from the ground up, winning full-time officers, staff support, a bigger block grant, and a record election turnout, to ending up on stage in Brighton a year ago. Conference, we've had quite a year. Working to embed learner voice in every college, joining the Support Our Sixth Formers campaign, fighting for fairer funding for all, supporting our National Society of Apprentices to lead the way here and across the European Union. But I think it's probably time we stopped talking about journeys and started talking destinations. First, just look at the state of FE and skills in this country. Strategy after strategy, plan after plan, they promise improvements, then deliver cuts. Theresa May did it just the other week. There she was in Derby, launching the funding review, where she had the cheek to say that too often FE is for other people's children. Well, let me say this. It's not a STEAM we need, Prime Minister. It's books and equipment and funding and teachers and buildings and support. Re-elect me and I'll launch the biggest FE funding campaign this national union has ever seen, lobbying for FE maintenance grants, a roundtable in every region and every nation delivering a proper plan on FE funding and what we need to do to get it. Second, let's look at the state of ourselves. 65% of the membership, but only 6.5% of the block grants. But things are starting to change. Our second NUS president from further education, our first ever apprentice elected as a full-time officer. FE louder than ever in NUS, with more FE delegates on this conference floor than ever before. And our National Society of Apprentices, stronger and louder than ever, leading the way on learner representation. Re-elect me and I'll be right there with you, delivering more support for learner voice than ever before, lobbying for FE unions and block grants, fighting attacks on our funding, our officers and our staff, winning proper membership status for the apprentices on this conference floor, an FE union development plan in every region and every nation, delivering a proper plan on FE representation and what we need to do to get it. And then third, let's look at what we're learning. More and more changes are on the way. But we know, unless we act, they will meddle and they will get it wrong. They'll peddle the same old myth that uni is for the head and college is for the hands. But being a doctor doesn't just need essays, it needs skills. So does being an architect. So does being an accountant, a builder, and a vet. So re-elect me and I'll lead the fight we need, changing the way we see education in this country, lobbying for proper information, advice and guidance and career support, fighting for T-levels that are led by learners, working in England and Wales and Scotland and Northern Ireland on a UK-wide vision for FE and skills that ends once and for all the artificial divide between academic and vocational. Conference, I've been on a journey with you as VPFE, but behind the scenes, I've been on a personal journey myself. Even in NUS, FE is still not understood by the movement we belong in. It's because of this I've faced some hard truths. Conference, I don't believe in telling people to change unless I'm willing to show the way. I've grown as a campaigner and activist. I've become a strong and empowered woman leader of this national union. Conference, you know who I am, and I can't wait to carry on. Effie is here to stay, and so am I. Re-elect Emily Chapman, #1 for further education. Thank you.
Thank you to both of our candidates. It's not easy standing on a national stage. Can I just say how impressed I am that Conference managed to get through 1.5 elections before you started whooping again? Many thanks. Can we keep whooping to a minimum? It's an access need. It means that anyone can participate in our conference that's in this room. It's really important. Further education candidates, you can step down from the stage. Remember to fill in your own ballots. It's always worth a reminder. So whilst these candidates are returning to their seats, you can all start filling in your further education ballots. Just a reminder, it's a preferential voting system. That means you put a 1 next to the name of the person you want most in the role, and then you work back from that. So 2, 3, I think. Only 3. Yeah. Whilst you're doing that, I'm going to start inviting Jules the Rules Mason onto stage. He's already here. He's ready and raring.
I'm back, Conference. Did you miss me? What do you mean, no? We're about to move into the final VP election for this session, so can I ask the candidates for Vice President Union Development to please come to the stage? So just a reminder, please ensure that you have the ballot paper for Vice President Union Development for this election. Do not have any other ballot paper ready to fill out for this election. Cool. So, candidates, you will each have 5 minutes to speak. You will go in alphabetical order based on your surname, and I will tell you when you're out of time. So, Jess, you will be the first candidate to speak, and you will have 5 minutes.
Jess Levy, Birmingham Guild of Students. It is really exciting to be able to stand up here today, but I have to be honest, Conference, it's also absolutely terrifying because I haven't always had the best experiences in elections. After months of door knocking and designing posters and painting banners, the night I won my union election was the happiest night of my life. And I celebrated hard. But the next day, with a foggy head and a fluttering heart, when I came back onto my campus, my heart stopped. There, in the toilets of my students' union, graffiti on the wall, death threats targeting me and other Jewish candidates, 5 little words scrawled on a wall. You see, Conference, words matter. Words have power, not just because of how they are said, but because of what they mean, because they're a marker, they're a promise, that those words will be followed by action. But words don't deliver change by themselves. There are plenty of words at this event. Speeches, rhetoric, promises, all talk and no trouser is a perennial problem in this movement. But in the annual UD election, something really has gone wrong. Because they promise you the world, then fail to deliver. They promise free sport, We get a 5-page PDF. They promise direct funding for societies and volunteers. We get 15 projects. They promise lower affiliation fees and support for SUs on harassment in sport, and they deliver nothing, nothing, nothing of the sort. They promise National Union of Activists, but we get a UD zone of inertia. But the worst is what they promise FE. A guaranteed SAB, they say. A minimum budget, they shout. They stand here year after year, promising colleges the earth, knowing they have no idea how to deliver it. Well, I've had enough. We've all had enough of grand speeches. A little less conversation and a little more action is what we need, conference, because let's face up to the truth. If NUS went through Quality Students' Union, it would barely even pass. If your SAB team acted like NEC, they'd be cleared off your campus. And if you treated your students like NUS treated SUs, charging more and more for less and less, you'd be shut down. We need action now. Instead of blogging about NUS Extra, over the last couple of days, hundreds of you have been using your NU Desk cards. Discounts for delegates here in Glasgow. It took 12 days. Imagine what I could do in 12 months. A weekly briefing telling you what the wins that other SUs are having. That's what we need. A monthly compendium of projects that SUs are getting funding for. That's what we want. Help with reading committee papers. Support for meetings with senior managers. Support for communicating rights to students. Training for chairs of committees. Support for SABs on governance and finance. NUS election help to train our candidates to be good instead of just chucking them out when they're bad. An honest FE development programme that gives every student in every college the right to be represented in complaints and appeals and disciplinaries. A benefit statement that actually has some benefits on it. And there's more. An NUS graduate scheme supporting student leaders to take the next steps in their life after SUs. I won't just talk about it, I'll deliver it. An annual State of the Movement for Unions report shouting about the work we do and the lives that we change. I won't just promise it, I'll roll it out. Proper work on placement students, real research on student activities, sports SABs lauded like heroes, not painted as pariahs, and conference. Instead of competing over TEF and NSS, let's play the league tables and the spiked rankings at their own game. If your college delivers on mental health, it will score you points. If your university supports survivors of sexual assault, it will get the gold. And if your institution takes real steps to combat racism and sexism and homophobia and transphobia and Islamophobia and anti-Semitism, we should celebrate. And then there's our democracy. Every year they promise reform, but every year we're here literally going through the motions, amendments and parts and procedures, but where is the creativity? Under my leadership, next year will be the year of the idea. Support for every union to get involved in NUS policy making, policy workshops on every campus that wants one, a new online policy and ideas factory that allows every student, even the ones that aren't officers or delegates, to get involved, propose campaigns and solve problems. Like I said, it's really exciting to stand up here today because I know that we can do this. If you, like me, believe in a little less conversation and a whole lot more action, then vote for me, Jess Leedy, #1 VPUD, and let's get to work.
Time, candidate, time. That candidate was Jess Levy. The next candidate is Ali Milani. Ali, come to order, conference. We're in the middle of an election. Come to order and sit down. The next candidate is Ali Milani. Ali, you have 5 minutes.
340 days ago, on the beaches of sunny Brighton, we began our improbable journey. Our radical idea, our vision of a union development zone committed to connecting students to the heart of our national union. So for every student, officer, and activist who still believes in that vision, for every FE union who dreams beyond these conference walls, for every international student and migrant who continues to hold true that our power is being a collective, unwavering force, standing to be re-elected, your Vice President, Union Development, Ali Milani, NEC. Conference. My path would begin in an underfunded, unaffiliated college. It would twist and turn through the streets of Millbank in 2010 with the anger and passion only the student movement can bring. I would find my place in education like many of you here on conference floor, connecting with a society and a sports club. I would then become a sabbatical officer, and in the most extraordinary of circumstances, in a story only possible in this student movement, you would entrust me, the son of immigrants, the most unlikeliest of candidates, to become your first Muslim Vice President Union Development in the history of NUS. And our record of bringing our movement together, of achieving as one, of not just speeches, but action, that is what UD is all about. We launched the Activities Fund that for the first time directly funded and supported student campaigns on the ground. We launched research into sports clubs, making it clear that your financial status, sexual orientation, race, and gender should have no impact on your ability to participate in sports. We created the NUS Ethics Board because we know we will not be looked back on and admired for our impartiality. History will judge us on what we did. So I promise you, here and now, whether it's Rohingya or Nigeria, Ferguson or Jerusalem, this UD zone will stand against the oppressors. We will take sides. Conference, we have done some awesome things together, created in just a few months an incredible vision. But we are just getting started. Re-elect me, and I will call an immediate review into student elections all across the country. For every black and international student unjustly disqualified. For every Muslim and Jewish student that faces rampant Islamophobia and anti-Semitism on their campus. For every one of those cases is our failure, and it will not happen again. If you entrust in me a second year, I will organize specific officer training on management of staff and HR. Because conference, it's not a WhatsApp group of CEOs or an NUS officer from years ago that runs this movement. It's you, the students. Elect me, and we will complete the work with the Women's Campaign to launch the first ever sexual harassment survey in further education. Because if there's anyone in our movement left with a semblance of doubt, if there's anyone in our colleges and in our sixth form who continues to believe that sexual harassment and misconduct will go unchallenged, this Union Development Zone will be their eternal reminder that time is up. Our vision is radical, and our vision conference is possible. When students stand hand in hand, walk shoulder to shoulder, we are immovable. Yet conference, the naysayers will continue to talk. The cynics will call us snowflakes. The press will demonize us. They will commit articles and column inches to attacking our officers and our unions. I have seen it myself. I have had threats on my life come through my letter door. But I want you to know today on this stage, whether you're FE or HE, whether you're a radical or a moderate, whether you vote for me or you don't vote for me, we will build a Union Development Zone that will have in its DNA that we have never just been a collection of students' unions. We are now and forever will be the National Union of Students. So if you're fired up, if you're ready to go, and if you believe, like I do, in an NUS radical in thought and unstoppable in action, vote Ali Milani, VP UD.
What was said about whooping? Conference, no whooping. Thank you to both candidates. After you've had your little word on stage, you can leave. Now my attention and focus is on the rest of you. Now, don't forget, please ensure that it's the UD Vice President ballot paper that you're completing for this election. And again, ensure that you state your preferences numerically. As with the National President election earlier today, you will be depositing your completed ballot papers, so Vice President Further Education, Vice President Higher Education, and Vice President Union Development at the back of the conference floor as you leave. So you need to both have on display your green delegate card and your yellow delegate wristband. You need to have both on display to be able to deposit your completed ballot papers. For any delegates outside of conference floor, there is a ballot box open at the info point. And in case you can't remember the candidates' names, they've happily and helpfully appeared on screen. Can everyone sit down? I haven't released any blocks yet. Everyone needs to take a seat and be quiet. So everyone needs to take a seat. That means take a seat, not stand up and chat. It means take a seat. Could everyone please be quiet? I want it deadly quiet, so a pin dropped can be heard. Thank you, by the way. So those delegates with access needs, you can leave first by the back two doors. Remember, you need to have on display your yellow delegate wristband and your green delegate voting card. If you don't have both on display, you won't be able to deposit your ballot papers. And for candidates, you are entitled to have an observer attend the count, which will happen as soon as we have cleared conference floor. Like the election earlier, if the observers, if they're in conference floor, please come to the front and stay near Deputy Rodri. If the observer is out of conference floor, please make your way to Gala Room 1 and wait for my arrival. Everyone else needs to be seated, any seat. So, Scotland, I think you're at the back. You can begin to leave. Seeing as you're our host guests, I think it's fair I let you go first. I can be favoritism when it comes to releasing blocks, not favoritism when it comes to talking about candidates. The Midlands, I think you're at the back on the right. You can also leave. Don't forget to show your yellow wristband and your green delegate card. And can everyone else please be quiet and remain seated? So everyone else, if you were in either Scotland or the Midlands, you need to be seated and you need to be silent. The only other people moving should be observers coming to the front to be near Deputy Rodri. So the delegate to my right at the front, wandering around, you need to take a seat. Any seat. No, just take a seat. Any seat. The nearest seat. I'll keep on saying it till you sit down. Thank you. I've just reminded, if people don't do what I say, I can stop the collection of the ballot boxes, so that will take even longer to leave. So please obey my polite instructions. Thank you.